Sir Bobby Charlton, the heart of English football. Few names in football carry the weight of history, resilience, and brilliance quite like Sir Bobby Charlton. A survivor, a legend, and a symbol of English football at its very best. From tragedy to triumph, his story is one of quiet greatness and unforgettable impact on the beautiful game. Chapter 1. Early life. Sir Bobby Charlton was born on October 11, 1937, in Ashington, a small mining town in Northumberland, England. Football ran through his veins. His mother's side of the family produced several professional players, including his famous uncle, Jackie Milburn. From an early age, it was clear Bobby had something special. Not just talent, but vision, discipline, and a powerful shot that would later become his trademark. At 15, he joined Manchester United, stepping into a system that would shape his life forever. Chapter 2. The Busby Babes. Charlton became part of the famous Busby Babes, a young, exciting team built by manager Matt Busby. The team played fearless, attacking football. Charlton quickly stood out, calm under pressure, elegant on the ball, and deadly from distance. By the late 1950s, Manchester United looked unstoppable. They were not just winning, they were redefining English football. But everything changed in 1958. Chapter 3. The Munich air disaster. On February 6, 1958, tragedy struck. The team's plane crashed in Munich while returning from a European match. This event, known as the Munich air disaster, killed 23 people, including 8 Manchester United players. Bobby Charlton survived. He was just 20 years old. The disaster changed him forever. He carried the memory of lost teammates throughout his life. For many, his career became not just about football, but about honoring those who never got the chance to continue. Chapter 4. Rebuilding and Rising. After Munich, Manchester United had to rebuild from the ground up. Charlton became the cornerstone. Under Matt Busby's guidance, the team slowly rose again. Charlton evolved into a complete midfielder, scoring goals, controlling matches, and leading by example. He wasn't loud. He didn't chase headlines. But his consistency and brilliance made him one of the most respected players in the world. Chapter 5. 1966 World Cup glory. In 1966, England hosted the FIFA World Cup. It would become the defining moment of Charlton's international career. Playing alongside stars like Geoff Hurst, Charlton was instrumental in England's success. In the semi-final against Portugal, he scored twice, leading England to victory. Then came the final at Wembley against West Germany. England won 4-2 after extra time, securing their first, and still only, World Cup. That year, Charlton was awarded the Ballon d'Or, recognizing him as the best player in the world. Chapter 6. European triumph. In 1968, a decade after Munich, Manchester United reached the European Cup final. Facing Benfica, Charlton scored twice in a 4-1 victory. Manchester United became the first English club to win the European Cup. It was more than a trophy, it was redemption. A tribute to the Busby Babes. A moment that connected past tragedy with present triumph. Chapter 7. Legacy. Sir Bobby Charlton retired as one of football's greatest ever players. He held records for appearances and goals at Manchester United for decades. But more importantly, he embodied sportsmanship, humility, and dedication. He later became a director at Manchester United, continuing to shape the club he loved. Sir Bobby Charlton wasn't just a footballer. He was a survivor, a leader, a symbol of resilience. In a game often defined by noise and ego, he stood out through quiet excellence. And that is why his legacy will never fade. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our next video on icons of sport. Paul Gascoigne, better known as Gazza, is one of the most gifted and unpredictable footballers England has ever produced. Born on May 27, 1967, in the working-class town of Gateshead in northeast England, Gascoigne grew up in a close family during a difficult period of economic struggle. From an early age, football became both his escape and his passion. He spent hours playing in the streets and quickly developed a natural talent that stood out from everyone around him. As a teenager, Gascoigne joined the youth system at Newcastle United, the club he supported as a boy. He made his professional debut in 1985 and soon became known for his creativity, fearless dribbling, and ability to control games from midfield. Fans loved not only his skill but also his humour and personality. He played with freedom and emotion, making him different from many players of his era. By 1988, Gascoigne's performances had attracted attention across England, and he signed for Tottenham Hotspur for a record fee for a British midfielder at the time. At Tottenham, Gazza became a national superstar. He helped the club win the FA Cup in 1991 and scored some unforgettable goals, including a famous long-range free kick against Arsenal in the FA Cup semi-final. However, during the final itself, Gascoigne suffered a serious knee injury after making a reckless challenge early in the match. The injury would affect his career for years. Despite the setback, Gascoigne's greatest rise to fame came with the England national team. Managed by Bobby Robson, England reached the semi-finals of the 1990 FIFA World Cup in Italy. Gascoigne's emotional reaction after receiving a yellow card against West Germany became one of the most iconic moments in English football history. Knowing the booking would suspend him from the final if England progressed, he burst into tears on the pitch. Millions of fans connected with his emotion, and Gazza became a symbol of passion, vulnerability, and national pride. After the World Cup, Gascoigne moved to Italy to play for Lazio in Serie A, then considered the toughest football league in the world. His time in Italy showed flashes of brilliance, but injuries and fitness problems made it difficult for him to consistently perform at his best. Even so, his popularity remained huge both in England and abroad. In 1995, Gascoigne returned to Britain to join Rangers Football Club in Scotland. This period marked one of the happiest and most successful chapters of his career. He helped Rangers win several league titles and was named Scottish Football Writers' Player of the Year in 1996. One of his most famous moments came when he scored and celebrated against Celtic after a week of intense media attention, showing once again how he thrived under pressure. Gascoigne also played a major role for England at UEFA Euro 1996, a tournament held in England. During a match against Scotland, he scored one of the greatest goals in European Championship history by flicking the ball over a defender before volleying it into the net. His celebration, lying on the pitch while teammates sprayed water into his mouth, became another iconic image of the decade. England reached the semi-finals again, and Gazza was at the heart of the team's success. Although his football talent was extraordinary, Gascoigne's personal life became increasingly troubled. He struggled with alcohol addiction, mental health issues, and the pressure of fame. Injuries also reduced his ability on the pitch. In the later years of his career, he played for clubs including Middlesbrough FC, Everton Football Club, and clubs in China and the United States, but he was no longer the same player who had dazzled crowds in the 1990s. Away from football, Gascoigne became one of the most recognizable celebrities in Britain during the 1990s. His humor, honesty, and unpredictable personality made him popular far beyond football fans. He regularly appeared on television shows, in newspaper headlines, and in advertising campaigns. Unlike many athletes who carefully controlled their image, Gazza seemed completely natural and unfiltered. People felt they were seeing the real person, which made him relatable and memorable. However, fame also brought intense pressure. Gascoigne often struggled with the attention that surrounded him, and he found it difficult to cope with life outside football. Teammates and coaches frequently spoke about his emotional nature and the way he relied on football as an outlet. As injuries increased and his playing career began to slow down, these personal struggles became more serious. Even during difficult periods, Gascoigne's love for the game never disappeared. Former players often described him as one of the most naturally talented footballers they had ever seen. Coaches praised his balance, vision, passing ability, and confidence on the ball. He could create chances from nothing and had an instinctive understanding of the game that could not easily be taught. Many football experts believe that, without injuries and personal difficulties, he could have achieved even greater success at club and international level. Gazza also had a unique connection with supporters. Fans admired him not only because of his ability, but because he showed genuine emotion. In an era when many athletes were expected to appear tough and controlled, Gascoigne openly laughed, cried, celebrated wildly, and sometimes made mistakes in public. This honesty helped supporters connect with him on a personal level. To many people, He represented the passion and unpredictability that make football exciting. Throughout his life, Gascoigne has continued to receive support from the football community. Former teammates, managers, and fans have repeatedly spoken about the importance of protecting his legacy and recognizing his achievements on the pitch. Documentaries, interviews, and television specials about his life have introduced his story to younger generations who never saw him play live. Today, Paul Gascoigne is remembered as one of England's greatest ever midfielders and one of football's most fascinating personalities. His career included moments of brilliance, heartbreak, triumph, and struggle, making his story far more than a simple sporting success. For many fans, Gazza represents the idea that football is not only about winning trophies, but also about emotion, creativity, and unforgettable moments that stay with people forever. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to True Footballing Icons. Arthur Wharton is remembered as the world's first black professional footballer, but his story is about far more than football. It is a story of courage, determination, and breaking barriers during a time when racism and discrimination were deeply rooted in society. Long before football became the global sport we know today, Arthur Wharton was already changing history. Arthur Wharton was born on October 28, 1865, in Jamestown, in what is now Ghana. At the time, the country was known as the Gold Coast and was part of the British Empire. His father was a Methodist missionary and his mother came from a royal Ghanaian family. His family hoped he would eventually become a missionary himself, and as a teenager he traveled to England to continue his education. However, after arriving in England, Wharton quickly discovered that his true talent was sport. He was naturally gifted in almost every athletic activity he tried. He competed in running, cycling, football, cricket, and rugby, but it was sprinting that first brought him national attention. In 1886, Arthur Wharton set a world record in the 100-yard sprint, completing the race in just 10 seconds. At the time, this made him one of the fastest men in the world. His speed and athleticism amazed spectators, and newspapers began reporting on the talented athlete from the Gold Coast. Alongside athletics, Wharton developed a passion for football. He began playing as a goalkeeper and quickly became known for his exciting and fearless style. During the 19th century, goalkeepers were usually expected to stay close to their goal line and play cautiously. Wharton was completely different. He rushed out to challenge attackers, made dramatic diving saves, and used his speed to cover large areas of the pitch. Some reports from the time described him as entertaining and unpredictable. Fans enjoyed watching him because he played with energy and confidence. Many football historians now believe he was years ahead of his time in the way he approached goalkeeping. Wharton played for several clubs during his career, including Darlington FC, Sheffield United FC, and Stockport County FC. In 1889, he became one of the first footballers to play professionally in England, making him the first black professional footballer in history. This achievement was groundbreaking. Football was rapidly growing across Britain, but black players were almost completely absent from the professional game. Victorian society was filled with racial prejudice, and Wharton regularly faced discrimination both on and off the pitch. Newspapers often focused more on the color of his skin than his ability as a player. Racist stereotypes were common during the era, and Wharton had to deal with treatment that modern footballers would never accept today. Despite this, he continued to play with confidence and professionalism. Many supporters respected him because he refused to let prejudice stop him from succeeding. His performances earned admiration from teammates and fans who recognized his talent and bravery. In many ways, Arthur Wharton became a symbol of perseverance during one of the most difficult periods in British sporting history. One of the most impressive things about Wharton was his versatility. Although he is best remembered as a goalkeeper, he could also play in outfield positions when needed. His speed and athleticism allowed him to adapt easily, making him one of the most complete athletes of his generation. Unlike modern footballers, players in the 19th century did not earn enormous salaries. Most still needed other jobs to survive financially. Wharton spent much of his life working in physically exhausting industrial jobs, including coal mining. The contrast between his sporting achievements and his difficult working life highlights how different football was during that period. Today's players perform in front of millions of fans and become global celebrities. Arthur Wharton, despite making history, spent years working dangerous jobs simply to support himself and his family. As he grew older, Wharton slowly moved away from professional sport. His fame faded, and many people forgot about his achievements. When he died in 1930 at the age of 65, his contribution to football history was largely unknown. 4 decades after his death, Arthur Wharton's story remained forgotten. However, during the late 20th century, historians and football organizations began rediscovering his legacy. Campaigns were launched to ensure he received proper recognition as the first black professional footballer. Gradually, Wharton's story began receiving the attention it deserved. Statues and memorials were created in his honor, and educational projects helped introduce his story to younger generations. Today, many football fans and historians see him as one of the most important pioneers in the history of the sport. Wharton's influence reaches far beyond football. He opened doors for generations of black players who followed him and proved that talent could overcome barriers, even during a time of extreme discrimination. Modern football is one of the most diverse sports in the world, with players from different races, cultures, and nationalities competing together at the highest level. Pioneers like Arthur Wharton helped make that possible long before equality existed in society. His story is not just about football. It is about courage, resilience, and challenging prejudice. More than a century later, his impact can still be felt throughout the game. Arthur Wharton's life reminds us that true pioneers are not always fully appreciated in their own time, but their influence can last forever. And that is the story of Arthur Wharton, a man whose courage, talent, and determination changed football history forever. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to True Footballing Icons for more stories about the legends who shaped the beautiful game. Thanks for watching. Franz Beckenbauer, the Emperor of Football. What if the greatest defender in football history didn't defend like a defender at all? Before Franz Beckenbauer, defenders cleared the ball, tackled hard, and stayed at the back. Beckenbauer changed football forever. He moved with elegance, controlled games with intelligence, and turned defending into an art form. That is why the world called him Der Kaiser, the Emperor. Franz Beckenbauer is one of the most influential footballers in history. Nicknamed Der Kaiser, meaning the Emperor, he changed the role of the defender forever. Elegant, intelligent, and calm under pressure, Beckenbauer became the symbol of leadership and class in football. He was not just a great defender, he reinvented how defenders could play. Franz Beckenbauer was born on September 11, 1945, in Munich, Germany. As a young boy, he quickly showed exceptional football intelligence and technical ability. He joined the youth academy of Bayern Munich and rose through the ranks at a time when the club was still developing. Beckenbauer would later become the central figure in transforming Bayern Munich into one of the biggest clubs in world football, revolutionizing the defender role. Before Beckenbauer, defenders mainly focused on stopping attacks and clearing the ball. Franz changed everything. Playing as a sweeper, or libero, he carried the ball out from defense, controlled possession, started attacks, and dictated the tempo of games. He combined defensive intelligence, technical skill, vision, leadership, and composure. Rather than relying on aggressive tackling, he used positioning and anticipation to dominate matches. Modern ball-playing defenders owe a huge part of their style to Beckenbauer. Bayern Munich's success. Alongside legendary teammates like Gerd Müller, Sepp Maier, Uli Hoeneß, Beckenbauer led Bayern Munich into a golden era. Major achievements: multiple Bundesliga titles, multiple DFB Pokal trophies, 3 consecutive European Cups from 1974 to 1976 Intercontinental Cup victory. As captain, he brought authority, intelligence, and elegance to one of Europe's greatest teams. International glory with West Germany. Beckenbauer also became the leader of the West Germany national team. 1970 World Cup. One of football's most famous images came during the 1970 World Cup semi-final against Italy. After injuring his shoulder, Beckenbauer continued playing with his arm strapped to his body because substitutions were limited. That moment showed the toughness behind his graceful style. Euro 1972. As captain, he led West Germany to victory at UEFA Euro 1972, where the team played some of the best football in Europe. 1974 World Cup victory. The greatest moment of his playing career came in 1974. Beckenbauer captained West Germany to FIFA World Cup victory on home soil, defeating the Netherlands led by Johan Cruyff. Germany won 2-1, and Beckenbauer lifted the World Cup trophy as captain. It cemented his place among football's greatest players. Ballon d'Or success. Beckenbauer won the Ballon d'Or twice, 1972 and 1976. This was extremely rare for a defender and proved how complete his influence on the game truly was. Playing style. Beckenbauer played football with incredible calmness and intelligence. Key traits: elegant movement, excellent passing, tactical awareness, leadership, vision from defense, composure under pressure. He made football look effortless and controlled games through intelligence rather than aggression. He turned defending into an art form. Beckenbauer joined the New York Cosmos in the United States. There, he played alongside football legends such as Pelé and Carlos Alberto Torres. His presence helped increase football's popularity in America during the late 1970s. Beckenbauer also succeeded as a manager. In 1990, he guided West Germany to another FIFA World Cup title. This made him one of the few people in football history to win the World Cup as both. As a player and a manager, Beckenbauer's impact extended beyond the pitch. He became one of football's most respected ambassadors and helped shape the global image of German football for decades. His confidence, calm personality, and leadership made him admired around the world. To many fans, Beckenbauer represented football played with intelligence and elegance rather than pure physicality. Even today, when people describe a defender as classy or complete, comparisons to Beckenbauer are never far away. Franz Beckenbauer changed football forever. Modern defenders are expected to build attacks, control possession, lead from the back, read the game intelligently. Beckenbauer created that blueprint decades earlier. Players like Franco Baresi, Paolo Maldini, and Virgil van Dijk all reflect parts of the style he helped pioneer. Why he is a real footballing icon. Franz Beckenbauer is a footballing icon because he completely changed the role of the defender. He combined elegance with leadership and intelligence while winning football's biggest trophies. Very few players redefine an entire position. Beckenbauer did exactly that. Franz Beckenbauer was more than a legendary footballer. He was a revolutionary figure who transformed football through intelligence, composure, and leadership. From Bayern Munich to World Cup glory with Germany, his influence remains visible in modern football today. That is why Franz Beckenbauer will always be remembered as one of football's true emperors. If you enjoyed this story of a true footballing icon, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which football legend should feature next in the series. This is Wayne Rooney, England's most explosive talent of a generation. A player who had everything: power, skill, vision, and a fire that never switched off. A teenage prodigy. A Manchester United legend. A player who carried a nation. And a career filled with brilliance, controversy, pressure, and redemption. But this isn't just a story about football. It's a story about identity. About growing up too fast. About expectation. And about what it truly takes to become a legend. To understand Wayne Rooney, you have to go back to the beginning. Croxteth, Liverpool. Not the glamorous side of football. Not the academies filled with scouts and cameras. Just streets, cages, and raw competition. This is where Rooney was built. Every touch, earned. Every game, a battle. He wasn't polished. He wasn't refined. He was real. All I ever wanted to do was play football. And he meant it. While others trained, Rooney lived the game. Kicking a ball for hours. Imagining stadiums, crowds, goals, moments. And more importantly, he imagined winning. From a young age, there was something different. Not just talent. Mentality. Aggression. Confidence. He didn't fear older players. He challenged them. He demanded the ball. And when he had it, he made things happen. That hunger led him to Everton. And it didn't take long. At just 16, he stepped into professional football. No fear. No hesitation. Just instinct. Then came the moment. October 2002. Arsenal. One of the greatest teams England had ever seen. Unbeaten. Dominant. Untouchable. Until Rooney. The ball drops. He hits it. Top corner. Game over. History made. A 16-year-old had just announced himself to the world. Everything changed overnight. Fame. Pressure. Expectation. But Rooney didn't slow down. If anything, he got better. Stronger. More determined. More dangerous. And when a talent like that appears, the biggest clubs come calling. Manchester United. One of the biggest clubs in the world. The move that would define his career. At just 18, he walked into a dressing room full of winners. Leaders. Champions. Legends. And he had to prove himself instantly. At United, you don't get time. So he didn't wait. Champions League debut. Hat-trick. Statement made. Under Sir Alex Ferguson. Rooney evolved. Not just as a player, but as a competitor. A thinker. A leader. He learned discipline. He learned responsibility. But he never lost that edge. That fire. That anger that drove him. Rooney wasn't easy. He argued. He reacted. He pushed limits. But Ferguson understood him. He didn't try to change Rooney. He refined him. Controlled the chaos. And turned it into greatness. As seasons passed, Rooney became central to everything United did. Goals. Assists. Work rate. Leadership. He wasn't just part of the team. He was the engine. Then came the peak. 2007-08. Everything clicked. United were unstoppable. Ronaldo scoring. Tevez pressing. Rooney doing everything. He sacrificed personal glory. Dropped deeper. Created space. Worked harder than anyone else. Because for Rooney, winning came first. And it all led to one night. Moscow. The Champions League final. Rain pouring. Tension everywhere. Manchester United vs Chelsea. A battle of equals. 120 minutes of intensity. Mistakes. Moments. Near misses. Then penalties. The ultimate test. And when it was over, United stood alone. Champions of Europe. For Rooney, this wasn't just a trophy. It was validation. Proof. That he belonged at the very top. But greatness isn't just about peaks. It's about consistency. And Rooney delivered. Year after year. Different roles. Different systems. Same impact. Striker. Midfielder. Playmaker. Leader. He adapted, again and again. I had to change. The team always came first. Then came one of the most iconic moments in Premier League history. Manchester Derby. Everything on the line. The ball comes in. Rooney leaps. Bicycle kick. Perfect. Unstoppable. Legendary. It wasn't just a goal. It was a statement. A reminder. Of just how special he was. As time passed, records followed. Goals kept coming. Appearances rising. Until one day, he stood alone. Manchester United's all-time top scorer. 253 goals. History. But while club football brought success, international football told a different story. With England, came expectation. Massive expectation. Hope. Pressure. Scrutiny. Euro 2004. Rooney exploded. Fearless. Unplayable. 4 goals. A nation believing. For a moment, it felt like England had found their saviour. But football is unpredictable. Cruel. Unforgiving. 2006 World Cup. Quarter-final. Portugal. A moment of frustration. A stamp. A red card. And just like that, everything changed. Criticism. Backlash. Doubt. I let my emotions get the better of me. But Rooney didn't hide. He faced it. Learned from it. Grew. Years passed. Tournaments came and went. Ups. Downs. Near misses. Euro 2012. A chance at redemption. A goal. A moment. A step forward. And eventually, history again. 53 goals for England. A national record. But even then, something was missing. We never quite delivered, and that hurts. Rooney's story isn't perfect. And that's what makes it real. Mistakes. Controversies. Pressure. Growth. From a teenager full of emotion, to a leader carrying responsibility. Then, the return. Everton. Home. A full circle moment. And still, the magic remained. A goal from inside his own half. Vision. Execution. Confidence. Then, one final adventure. DC United. Different league. Same mentality. One defining moment. A last-ditch tackle. A perfect assist. Determination. Commitment. Refusal to give up. And when it ended, a new chapter began. Management. Derby County. Chaos. Financial crisis. Points deductions. And yet, Rooney stood strong. Leading. Fighting. Refusing to collapse. It was the hardest challenge of my career. So when you step back and look at the full picture, what do you see? Not just numbers, but impact. Over 750 games. Over 300 goals. 5 Premier League titles. A Champions League. But more than that. Emotion. Energy. Intensity. Rooney wasn't perfect. He wasn't polished. He was real. And that's why. He connected. Because fans didn't just watch Rooney. They felt him. Every tackle. Every goal. Every reaction. He gave everything. Every time. And that is what defines a true footballing icon. From Croxteth to the world stage, Wayne Rooney's story will live on forever. This has been another story from True Footballing Icons, where we tell the stories of the players who defined the game. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe. Before he became an Arsenal legend, before the goals, the trophies, and the television career, Ian Wright was just a young boy from South London trying to escape a difficult childhood. Born on November 3, 1963, in Woolwich, London, Wright grew up in a tough environment marked by poverty and violence. In interviews and in his autobiography, he spoke openly about his painful relationship with his stepfather and how football became both an escape and a purpose during difficult years at home. Wright later wrote, "Football saved my life." Unlike many football stars, his rise to the top was anything but straightforward. He was rejected by professional clubs as a teenager and spent years playing non-league football while working ordinary jobs to survive. At one stage, he was even serving a short prison sentence for driving offences when he realised his life needed to change completely. Most future football stars are already professionals by their late teens. Ian Wright was still searching for a chance in his 20s. Everything changed when he joined semi-professional side Greenwich Borough before eventually earning a move to Crystal Palace FC in 1985 at the age of 21. Quick, explosive, fearless, and full of personality, Wright played football with pure joy. Under manager Steve Coppell, he formed a dangerous partnership with Mark Bright and helped Crystal Palace rise through English football. In the 1988-89 season, he helped Crystal Palace earn promotion to the top division. A year later, Palace shocked English football by reaching the 1990 FA Cup final against Manchester United FC. Although Palace lost after a replay, Wright scored twice in the original final despite coming on as a substitute after injury. His performance on the biggest stage in English football announced him to the entire country. By the early 1990s, bigger clubs were circling. In 1991, Arsenal FC signed Ian Wright for around £2.5 million, a club record fee at the time. It became one of the greatest transfers in Arsenal history. Wright scored on his league debut against Southampton and instantly connected with the Highbury crowd. Over the next 7 years, he became the face of Arsenal Football Club. At Highbury, Wright combined lethal finishing with charisma and energy that supporters adored. He scored every type of goal imaginable: tap-ins, volleys, chips, headers, and long-range strikes. His movement inside the penalty box made him almost impossible to defend. Wright had the instinct of a natural goalscorer, always anticipating where the ball would fall before defenders could react. Even when Arsenal played defensive football during the 1990s, Wright still found ways to score consistently. Former teammates often spoke about his positivity in the dressing room and the confidence he brought to the team. Arsenal supporters loved him not only because of the goals, but because of the connection he had with the fans. He celebrated every goal with pure emotion. He once said, "I never stopped being grateful that I made it." Across all competitions for Arsenal, Wright scored 185 goals in 288 matches, becoming Arsenal's all-time leading scorer at the time, a record later broken by Thierry Henry. During the 1993-94 season, he scored 35 goals in all competitions as Arsenal won both the FA Cup and the European Cup Winners' Cup. One of Wright's most iconic moments came in 1997 when he broke Cliff Bastin's long-standing Arsenal scoring record. After scoring his 179th goal for the club against Bolton Wanderers FC, Wright lifted his shirt to reveal another shirt underneath with the words, "179. Just done it." It instantly became one of the most famous celebrations in Premier League history. Wright's achievements included 581 club appearances, 287 club goals, Premier League champion, 2 FA Cups, League Cup winner, European Cup Winners' Cup winner. In his autobiography, he reflected on his journey, writing, "I always felt like I had something to prove." That hunger defined his career. For the England national football team, Wright earned 33 caps and scored 9 goals, representing his country at Euro 1992. Many fans still believe Wright deserved more opportunities for England during his peak years. Playing in an era filled with talented strikers, he often found himself competing for places despite his incredible club form. Wright eventually left Arsenal in 1998 and later played for West Ham United FC, Nottingham Forest FC, Celtic FC, and Burnley FC before retiring in 2000. Retirement was only the beginning of Wright's second career. Thanks to his humour, honesty, and personality, he became one of Britain's most popular football pundits, working with BBC Sport, ITV Sport, and Sky Sports. He also speaks openly about mental health, racism, education, and family life, while supporting youth projects and women's football, including the rise of the England women's national football team. Football also continued through his family. Wright is the father of former players Shaun Wright-Phillips and Bradley Wright-Phillips, both of whom built successful professional careers. Shaun became a Premier League winner with Chelsea FC and earned England caps, while Bradley became one of the highest scorers in Major League Soccer history in the United States. Despite all the fame and success, Wright never forgot where he came from. He wasn't a teenage wonder kid. He didn't have an easy path. Ian Wright fought for everything. From prison cells and rejection letters to becoming an Arsenal legend and one of football's most loved personalities, his story proves that belief and determination can change a life forever. If you enjoyed this episode of Real Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, where does Ian Wright rank among the greatest strikers in Premier League history? From the streets of Malmö to becoming one of the most feared strikers in football history, Zlatan Ibrahimovic built a career unlike anyone the sport has ever seen. Confident, controversial, brilliant. For more than 2 decades, Zlatan didn't just play football, he dominated headlines, defenders, and entire leagues across Europe. Born on October 3, 1981, in Malmö, Sweden, Ibrahimovic grew up in the tough Rosengård district, an area known for crime and poverty. His father emigrated from Bosnia, his mother from Croatia, and Zlatan's childhood was far from easy. In his autobiography, I Am Zlatan, he described stealing bicycles and struggling to fit in as a kid. Football became his escape. Zlatan once wrote, "I wanted to make it because I wanted a different life." As a teenager, His talent was impossible to ignore. Tall, technical, unpredictable, and incredibly skillful for his size, he quickly rose through the youth ranks at Malmö FF before making his professional debut in 1999. Soon, Europe's biggest clubs were paying attention. In 2001, Zlatan joined AFC Ajax under legendary manager Ronald Koeman. In Amsterdam, he developed into one of Europe's most exciting young forwards, winning 2 Eredivisie titles and scoring one of the greatest solo goals in football history against NAC Breda, dribbling past multiple defenders with unbelievable composure. His next move took him to Juventus FC, where he adapted to the tactical intensity of Italian football. Although Juventus were later stripped of league titles due to the Calciopoli scandal, Zlatan's reputation continued to grow. Then came FC Internazionale Milano. At Inter, Zlatan became a superstar. Between 2006 and 2009, he won 3 consecutive Serie A titles and established himself as one of the best strikers in world football. His combination of strength, technique, and outrageous goals made him unstoppable at times. In 2009, FC Barcelona signed Zlatan in one of the biggest transfers in football history. Playing under Pep Guardiola alongside Lionel Messi, expectations were enormous. But despite winning La Liga, Zlatan's relationship with Guardiola quickly collapsed. In his autobiography, Zlatan famously wrote, "You bought a Ferrari but drive it like a Fiat." That quote became one of the defining moments of his career and perfectly captured Zlatan's larger-than-life personality. After Barcelona, Zlatan returned to Italy with AC Milan and immediately helped the club win the Serie A title in 2011. By this stage, he had become a complete striker, powerful in the air, clinical in front of goal, and technically gifted enough to score goals most players would never even attempt. Many defenders described facing Zlatan as intimidating because he combined physical dominance with creativity. He could bully centre-backs one moment and score a delicate backheel or acrobatic volley the next. But it was in France where Zlatan reached another level. Joining Paris Saint-Germain FC in 2012, he transformed the club into a European powerhouse. Across 4 seasons, Zlatan scored 156 goals in 180 appearances, winning 4 straight League One titles and becoming PSG's all-time top scorer at the time. His goals ranged from impossible volleys to long-range screamers and acrobatic bicycle kicks. PSG fans adored him not only because of the trophies, but because Zlatan brought swagger and global attention to the club during a period when they were becoming one of Europe's elite teams. Then came perhaps the greatest goal of his career. In 2012, playing for Sweden national football team against England national football team, Zlatan scored an outrageous overhead kick from over 30 yards out. The goal stunned the football world and later won the FIFA Puskas Award. It remains one of the greatest goals ever scored. For Sweden, Zlatan became the nation's greatest ever player. 122 international caps, 62 international goals, Sweden's all-time leading scorer. Despite never winning a major international trophy, he carried Swedish football for over a decade. In 2016, Zlatan joined Manchester United FC under Jose Mourinho. Many doubted whether he could succeed in the Premier League at age 35. Instead, he scored 28 goals in his first season and helped United win the Europa League and League Cup. Even a serious knee injury couldn't stop him. After a spell in Major League Soccer with LA Galaxy, where he scored spectacular goals and delivered unforgettable interviews, Zlatan returned once again to AC Milan in 2020. Most players decline in their late 30s. Zlatan helped Milan win their first Serie A title in over a decade at the age of 40. Across his incredible career, Zlatan won league titles in the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, and France while scoring more than 570 career goals. But statistics alone cannot explain Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He turned confidence into an art form. Quotes like, "Lions don't compare themselves to humans," and "I can't help but laugh at how perfect I am," made him one of football's biggest personalities. Yet behind the arrogance was relentless discipline and belief. Teammates often spoke about his work ethic, intensity in training, and obsession with improving. Zlatan believed fearlessness was the key to success. Following his retirement in 2023, Zlatan remained involved with AC Milan in an advisory role while continuing to build his business and media projects off the pitch. From the streets of Rosengard to football immortality, Zlatan Ibrahimović created a career built on confidence, chaos, brilliance, and unforgettable moments. There has never been another footballer quite like him. If you enjoyed this episode of Real Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, where does Zlatan Ibrahimović rank among the greatest strikers of all time? From the terraces of Salford to the summit of world football, few players have defined an era at one club quite like Paul Scholes. Born on November 16, 1974, Scholes grew up in Langworthy, Salford, just a few miles from Old Trafford. Raised in a working-class family, football quickly became the centre of his life. He supported Manchester United as a boy and spent countless hours playing in local parks and school playgrounds. Even at a young age, coaches noticed something different about him. He wasn't physically dominant or particularly vocal, but he saw passes other players simply couldn't see. At 14 years old, Scholes joined the youth system at Manchester United FC, developing alongside future legends like David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, and Nicky Butt. Together, they would become known as the legendary class of '92, a generation that changed English football forever. Scholes made his first team debut in September 1994 against Port Vale in the League Cup and scored twice. It was the perfect introduction. Calm in possession, intelligent in movement, and fearless in front of goal, he looked completely at home despite being only 19 years old. By the mid-1990s, manager Alex Ferguson was building a new Manchester United team around youth, energy, and attacking football. Scholes quickly became one of Ferguson's most trusted players because of his incredible football IQ and relentless work ethic in training. Early in his career, Scholes often played as an attacking midfielder or second striker. His timing into the box became one of the deadliest weapons in English football. During the 1996-97 season, he scored 10 Premier League goals as United retained the title. Over time, his role evolved deeper into midfield where his passing range and control would define an entire era. Across 20 seasons with Manchester United, Scholes played 718 matches and scored 155 goals. For a midfielder, those numbers are extraordinary. But statistics alone cannot explain his greatness. Scholes had a unique understanding of space and tempo. He could slow a game down with a single touch or split a defense apart with one perfectly weighted pass. His trademark long-range shooting produced some unforgettable goals, volleys, half-volleys, and thunderous strikes from outside the box that became part of Premier League history. One of the defining characteristics of Scholes' career was consistency. While other players relied on pace or athleticism, Scholes relied on technique and intelligence. Even into his late 30s, he could dominate matches against younger opponents simply by reading the game faster than everyone else. Former teammates often spoke about how difficult he was to dispossess in training. Rio Ferdinand once described him as a joke in five-a-side games because nobody could get the ball off him. Training sessions at Carrington became legendary for Scholes controlling play effortlessly while barely seeming to move. During his career, Scholes won 11 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, 2 UEFA Champions League trophies, 1 FIFA Club World Cup. Only a tiny group of players in football history can match that collection of honours. One of his greatest moments came in 2008 during the Champions League semi-final against FC Barcelona. With the tie balanced at 0-0, Scholes struck a stunning first-time effort into the top corner from outside the penalty area. It remains one of the most iconic goals ever scored at Old Trafford and sent United to the final in Moscow. Ironically, 9 years earlier, Scholes had missed the 1999 Champions League final against FC Bayern Munich through suspension. Despite helping United reach the final during their historic treble-winning season, he could only watch from the sidelines as his teammates completed one of football's greatest comebacks. In his autobiography, Scholes wrote, "Winning the European Cup was all I'd ever dreamed about. Missing the final was torture." That disappointment stayed with him for years, which made the triumphs in 2008 and 2011 even more meaningful. Scholes was never interested in celebrity culture. Unlike many modern footballers, he rarely gave interviews, avoided social media, and preferred a quiet private life with his family. In his autobiography, he admitted, "I hated the idea of being famous. I just wanted to play football." That humility became one of the reasons fans respected him so deeply. His influence stretched far beyond England. Some of the greatest players in history openly admired him. Zinedine Zidane famously said, "My toughest opponent? Scholes of Manchester. He is the complete midfielder." Xavi called him the best central midfielder I've seen in the last 15 to 20 years. Andrea Pirlo once admitted, Scholes was the midfielder who had everything. Even Pep Guardiola reportedly described Scholes as the best midfielder of his generation. For the England national football team, Scholes earned 66 caps and scored 14 goals. However, his international career was often complicated by tactical decisions and constant changes in position. Despite this, he represented England at major tournaments including UEFA Euro 2000, the 2002 World Cup, UEFA Euro 2004, and the 2006 World Cup. Many believe England never truly used him correctly. Playing alongside stars like Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, Scholes was frequently shifted out wide despite being most effective through the centre. After initially retiring in 2011, Scholes stunned football by returning just months later during an injury crisis at Manchester United. Wearing the number 22 shirt, he immediately transformed the midfield again. His composure and experience helped guide United to another Premier League title in 2013, the final title of Ferguson's legendary career. When Scholes finally retired for good, football lost one of its purest talents. He was never the loudest player. He rarely chased headlines. But week after week, season after season, Paul Scholes mastered the game through intelligence, discipline, technique, and complete dedication to football itself. No drama. No ego. Just brilliance. And that is why Paul Scholes remains not only a Manchester United legend, but a true footballing icon. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story from football history. And let us know in the comments, where does Paul Scholes rank among the greatest midfielders of all time? From the streets of Marseille to football immortality, Zinedine Zidane became one of the most elegant and respected players the game has ever seen. Calm under pressure. Technically flawless. Effortlessly graceful. For millions of football fans, Zidane wasn't just a midfielder, he was an artist. Born on June 23, 1972, in Marseille, France, Zidane grew up in La Castellane, a tough housing district on the outskirts of the city. His parents were Algerian immigrants, and football quickly became his escape from the challenges of everyday life. As a child, Zidane spent hours playing football in local squares and concrete courts. Even then, his balance, touch, and control stood out from everyone around him. Zidane later said, "I had two lives. One life was football, and the other was waiting for football." At the age of 14, he joined the academy at AS Cannes and made his professional debut in 1989. His talent was undeniable, but success didn't come overnight. Zidane had to develop physically and mentally before becoming the player the world would eventually admire. After impressing in France, Zidane moved to FC Girondins de Bordeaux in 1992, where he truly began to shine. Alongside teammates like Christophe Dugarry and Bigzent Lizarazu, Zidane helped Bordeaux reach the 1996 UEFA Cup final. By then, Europe's biggest clubs were watching closely. In 1996, Zidane signed for Juventus FC and quickly established himself as one of the best midfielders in world football. Under legendary manager Marcello Lippi, Zidane mastered the tactical side of the game while adding consistency to his brilliance. At Juventus, he won 2 Serie A titles, 1 Intercontinental Cup, 1 UEFA Super Cup. More importantly, he became one of football's true superstars. Zidane's first touch, vision, and composure looked almost unreal at times. He glided across the pitch effortlessly, controlling matches without needing pace or physicality. David Beckham once said, "He could do things with a football that nobody else could." Then came the tournament that changed everything. At the 1998 FIFA World Cup, hosted in France, Zidane carried the hopes of an entire nation. After criticism earlier in the tournament, he produced the defining performance of his international career in the final against Brazil national football team. Zidane scored 2 headers as France won 3-0, securing the country's first-ever World Cup. France erupted in celebration, and Zidane became a national hero overnight. 2 years later, he helped France win UEFA Euro 2000, completing one of the greatest international peaks any player has ever achieved. In 2001, Real Madrid CF signed Zidane for a world record transfer fee. It was the beginning of the Galacticos era. Playing alongside stars like Ronaldo Nazario, Raúl González, Luis Figo, and Beckham, Zidane became the centerpiece of one of football's most famous teams. And in 2002, he produced perhaps the greatest goal in Champions League final history. Against Bayer 04 Leverkusen at Hampden Park, Zidane struck an unforgettable left-footed volley into the top corner moments before half-time. The goal secured Real Madrid's 9th European Cup and became one of the most iconic moments football has ever seen. Sir Alex Ferguson later described Zidane as one of the greatest players of all time. Across his playing career, Zidane won FIFA World Cup, UEFA European Championship, UEFA Champions League 2 Serie A titles, La Liga title, multiple domestic cups and Super Cups. Individually, his achievements were just as extraordinary. FIFA World Player of the Year, 3 times Ballon d'Or winner in 1998, named in countless greatest ever football teams. For France national football team, Zidane earned 108 caps and scored 31 goals. But Zidane's career was never completely free from controversy. In the 2006 FIFA World Cup, he produced one final masterpiece, carrying France to the final against Italy at the age of 34. Along the way, he delivered unforgettable performances against Brazil, Spain, and Portugal. Yet the final would end in dramatic fashion. After scoring a Panenka penalty, Zidane was sent off in extra time for headbutting Marco Materazzi following a verbal exchange. It became one of the most shocking moments in football history. Reflecting on the incident later, Zidane admitted, "I apologize to the children who watched that." Despite the controversy, many still remember the 2006 World Cup as proof of Zidane's genius. After retiring as a player, Zidane moved into coaching with Real Madrid's academy before eventually taking charge of the first team in 2016. What followed was historic. As manager of Real Madrid CF, Zidane won 3 consecutive UEFA Champions League titles, 2 La Liga titles, 2 FIFA Club World Cups, multiple domestic and European trophies. No manager had ever won 3 straight Champions Leagues in the modern era. Players often praise Zidane for his calm leadership and ability to manage huge personalities inside the dressing room. Cristiano Ronaldo once said, "Zidane gave me confidence and helped me a lot." Unlike many managers, Zidane rarely created drama. He relied on trust, communication, and respect, qualities that reflected the way he played football. Across both his playing and managerial careers, Zidane became one of the few figures in football history to conquer the game from every angle. Elegant as a player, historic as a manager. There are football legends, and then there is Zinedine Zidane. If you enjoyed this episode of Real Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, where does Zinedine Zidane rank among the greatest footballers of all time?
Before Messi, before Cristiano, there was Ronaldo. Not Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo Nazario. The original Ronaldo. The phenomenon. For many football fans, he was the most complete natural forward the game has ever seen. Fast, powerful, explosive, unstoppable. At his peak, defenders looked terrified every time he touched the ball. Born on September 18, 1976, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Ronaldo grew up in poverty and dreamed of escaping through football. From a young age, his talent looked different. He had incredible acceleration, close control at full speed, and a natural instinct for goals that very few players in football history possessed. Ronaldo began his professional career with Cruzeiro Esporte Clube, where he immediately exploded onto the scene. Goals came constantly, and Europe quickly noticed. In 1994, he moved to PSV Eindhoven, where his rise continued at frightening speed. Defenders simply could not handle him. Stepovers, explosive pace, powerful finishing, balance, strength. Ronaldo looked almost impossible to stop. By the age of 20, many already believed he was the best player in the world. Then came FC Barcelona, and football witnessed one of the greatest individual seasons ever produced by a forward. During the 1996-97 season, Ronaldo scored 47 goals in 49 games for Barcelona. But it was not just the numbers. It was how he scored them. Long solo runs, dribbles through entire defenses, finishes from impossible angles. Every touch felt dangerous. One goal against SD Compostela became legendary after Ronaldo sprinted through defenders from inside his own half before finishing brilliantly. Manager Bobby Robson famously called him a footballing Michelangelo. That is how special he looked. After Barcelona, Ronaldo joined FC Internazionale Milano, where he continued dominating Europe despite playing in one of football's toughest defensive eras. At Inter, Ronaldo became a global superstar. The stepovers, the speed, the power. He was football's biggest attraction. In 1997, at just 21 years old, Ronaldo won the Ballon d'Or and became the youngest winner in history at the time. But then everything changed. In 1999, Ronaldo suffered a devastating knee injury. And when he returned months later, disaster struck again. His knee completely ruptured during a comeback match for Inter Milan. One of football's greatest players collapsed in agony on the pitch while the entire stadium watched in silence. Many feared his career was over. Some believed he would never return to the top again. But Ronaldo refused to give up. And in 2002, football witnessed one of the greatest comebacks in sporting history. At the FIFA World Cup in South Korea and Japan, Ronaldo returned wearing the iconic haircut that became famous around the world. Many doubted him before the tournament. By the end, he was a world champion once again. Ronaldo scored 8 goals during the tournament, including both goals in the final against Germany. Brazil won the World Cup, and Ronaldo completed his redemption story. It remains one of football's most emotional moments. Ronaldo later said, "My body was in pain, but my desire to win was bigger." That mentality defined him. During his career, Ronaldo played for some of the world's biggest clubs: Barcelona, Inter Milan, Real Madrid, AC Milan. Across his professional career, Ronaldo scored more than 400 goals in just over 600 appearances, extraordinary numbers considering the serious injuries he suffered. Throughout his incredible career, Ronaldo collected trophies wherever he played. With PSV Eindhoven, he won the KNVB Cup. At FC Barcelona, he lifted the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, Copa del Rey, Spanish Super Cup. With Inter Milan, Ronaldo won the UEFA Cup in 1998 and became one of the most feared players in world football. At Real Madrid, he added 2 La Liga titles, Intercontinental Cup, Spanish Super Cup. And with Brazil, Ronaldo achieved football immortality: 2 FIFA World Cups, 2 Copa America titles, FIFA Confederations Cup. Individually, Ronaldo also won 2 Ballon d'Or awards and 3 FIFA World Player of the Year awards. By the end of his career, Ronaldo had scored more than 400 goals and established himself as one of the greatest forwards football has ever seen. Former teammates and opponents often describe him as the greatest natural talent they ever saw. Zinedine Zidane once said, "He was the best striker I ever saw." That opinion is shared by many football legends. Because Ronaldo combined everything: skill, power, speed, technique, finishing, and he played with joy. Children across the world copied his stepovers and hairstyles. Defenders feared him. Fans adored him. Even injuries could not erase his greatness. Because Ronaldo changed football forever. He inspired an entire generation of forwards that followed him. Without Ronaldo, many believe modern football attacking play would look completely different today. That is why Ronaldo Nazario will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the goals, not just because of the trophies, but because at his peak, football had never seen anything quite like him. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, was Ronaldo Nazario the greatest natural forward football has ever seen?
In a sport obsessed with goal scorers, flair players, and attacking stars, Paolo Maldini proved that defending could be just as beautiful as scoring goals. Elegant, intelligent, fearless. For more than 25 years, Maldini represented excellence at the very highest level of football. And for many fans, he remains the greatest defender the game has ever seen. Born on June 26, 1968, in Milan, Italy, Paolo Maldini was born into football royalty. His father, Cesare Maldini, captained AC Milan and later managed both Milan and the Italian national team. Football was part of Paolo's life from the very beginning. As a child, Maldini joined AC Milan's academy and quickly stood out because of his composure and intelligence. While other young defenders relied on aggression, Paolo focused on positioning, anticipation, and timing. Those qualities would define his entire career. At just 16 years old, Maldini made his debut for AC Milan in 1985. Nobody could have imagined that the teenager stepping onto the pitch that day would become one of football's greatest ever icons. Over the next 2 decades, Maldini became the heart and soul of AC Milan. He could play anywhere across the defense, left back, centre back, sweeper, and dominate in every role. Quick, elegant, and almost impossible to beat one-on-one, Maldini defended with a calmness rarely seen in football. He once famously said, "If I have to make a tackle, then I have already made a mistake." That quote perfectly summed up his approach to defending. Under legendary managers like Arrigo Sacchi and Fabio Capello, AC Milan became one of the greatest club sides football had ever seen. Alongside defensive legends like Franco Baresi, Alessandro Costacurta, and later Alessandro Nesta, Maldini helped build a defensive unit feared across Europe. But Maldini was far more than just a defender. He was a leader. Quiet, respected, and professional, he captained Milan through multiple generations of football. Younger players looked up to him not only because of his ability, but because of the standards he set every single day. Across his incredible career with AC Milan, Maldini won 7 Serie A titles, 5 UEFA Champions League titles, 5 UEFA Super Cups, FIFA Club World Cup, Coppa Italia, and multiple Italian Super Cups. In total, he made over 900 appearances for Milan. Let that sink in. Over 900 appearances, becoming one of the greatest one-club players in football history. Few players have ever shown such loyalty in the modern game. Maldini played against multiple generations of footballers, from Diego Maradona to Cristiano Ronaldo, adapting his game as football evolved around him. And somehow, he remained world-class throughout it all. One of the most iconic moments of Maldini's career came in the 2005 UEFA Champions League final against Liverpool FC. Just 51 seconds into the match, Maldini scored with a brilliant volley, becoming the oldest goalscorer in a Champions League final at the time. Although Milan would heartbreakingly lose the match on penalties after leading 3-0, Maldini's performance once again showed his quality on football's biggest stage. 2 years later, Milan got revenge. In 2007, Maldini captained AC Milan to another Champions League title against Liverpool, lifting the trophy for the 5th time in his career. For the Italy national football team, Maldini earned 126 caps and represented his country at multiple World Cups and European Championships. Although Italy never won a major international trophy during his playing career, Maldini came painfully close. He helped Italy reach the 1994 FIFA World Cup final and UEFA Euro 2000 final, losing both in heartbreaking fashion. Despite those disappointments, Maldini's reputation only grew stronger. Many of football's greatest players have called him the best defender they ever faced. Ronaldo Nazario once said, "Maldini was the toughest defender I ever played against." That praise meant everything considering Ronaldo faced some of the greatest defenders in football history. Off the pitch, Maldini became a symbol of professionalism and loyalty. In an era where footballers constantly changed clubs, chased contracts, and searched for fame, Maldini stayed loyal to Milan for his entire career. So respected was Maldini at AC Milan that after his retirement, the club permanently retired the famous number 3 shirt he wore throughout his legendary career. Milan announced the number would only ever return if one of Maldini's sons played regularly for the club's first team, a tribute rarely seen in football. Football also remained part of the Maldini family legacy. Paolo's sons, Daniel Maldini and Christian Maldini, both followed him into professional football, continuing one of the sport's most famous family dynasties. After retiring in 2009, Maldini remained closely connected to AC Milan and later returned to the club in a leadership role, helping guide Milan back towards success as a director. But statistics and trophies alone do not explain Paolo Maldini's greatness. It was the elegance, the consistency, the respect he earned from teammates and opponents alike. Maldini didn't need controversy or headlines to become iconic. His football spoke for itself. Across more than 2 decades, Paolo Maldini showed the world that defending could be intelligent, graceful, and inspiring. That is why he will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because he won trophies. Not just because he stayed loyal to one club. But because he represented everything great about football itself. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Paolo Maldini the greatest defender of all time? Before modern football became obsessed with tactics, pressing, and positional play, there was Johan Cruyff. A player so intelligent, so elegant, and so revolutionary that he didn't just play football. He changed it forever. Born on April 25, 1947, in Amsterdam, Cruyff grew up just minutes away from the stadium of AFC Ajax. His father owned a small fruit and vegetable shop near the ground, and from an early age football became his entire world. But Cruyff's childhood was shaped by tragedy. When Johan was only 12 years old, his father died from a heart attack. The loss deeply affected him and brought him even closer to Ajax, where the club effectively became a second family. Thin, small, and physically weaker than many other children, Cruyff relied on intelligence instead of strength. He studied the game constantly, always thinking several steps ahead of everyone else on the pitch. That football intelligence would eventually change the sport forever. Cruyff made his first team debut for Ajax in 1964 at just 17 years old. Despite his young age, his technical ability immediately stood out. He moved effortlessly across the pitch, combining quick feet, vision, balance, and creativity in ways defenders struggled to understand. Under legendary coach Rinus Michels, Ajax developed a revolutionary style known as total football. The idea was simple but groundbreaking. Every player could attack. Every player could defend. Every player could switch positions seamlessly. And Johan Cruyff became the perfect symbol of that philosophy. He wasn't just a striker, midfielder, or playmaker. He was everything at once. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Ajax dominated European football. With Cruyff leading the team, Ajax won 8 Dutch league titles, 5 KNVB Cups, 3 consecutive European Cups from 1971 to 1973 Intercontinental Cup, European Super Cup. Cruyff's performances made football look effortless. He glided across the field with elegance, often controlling entire matches with movement and intelligence rather than physical power. One moment in particular became immortal. At the 1974 FIFA World Cup, Cruyff introduced the world to the Cruyff turn during a match against Sweden. With one quick movement, he dragged the ball behind his standing leg and spun away from the defender. Football had never seen anything quite like it. The move became one of the most famous skills in football history and is still taught to young players today. At the 1974 World Cup, Cruyff captained the Netherlands national football team and inspired one of the greatest international sides ever assembled. Although the Netherlands lost the final to Germany national football team, the team's style captivated the world. Many people believed the Dutch side of 1974 played the greatest football ever seen despite not winning the trophy. Cruyff later said, "Quality without results is pointless. Results without quality is boring." That quote perfectly captured the way he viewed football. In 1973, Cruyff joined FC Barcelona for a world record transfer fee. Barcelona had been struggling domestically, but Cruyff transformed the club instantly. In his first season, Barcelona won La Liga for the first time in 14 years, including a famous 5-0 victory over Real Madrid CF at the Santiago Bernabeu. For Barcelona supporters, Cruyff became more than a footballer. He became a symbol of freedom, creativity, and identity during a difficult political period in Spain under the Franco regime. Throughout his playing career, Cruyff won 3 Ballon d'Or awards, multiple league titles in the Netherlands and Spain, 3 European Cups, countless individual honors. But Johan Cruyff's greatest influence was still to come. After retiring, Cruyff moved into management and once again changed football history. As manager of Ajax and later Barcelona, Cruyff introduced ideas that shaped the modern game. At Barcelona, he built the legendary Dream Team that won 4 consecutive La Liga titles and the club's first ever European Cup in 1992. More importantly, Cruyff created a football philosophy based on possession, movement, technical ability, and attacking football. That philosophy later influenced managers like Pep Guardiola, who once said, "Cruyff built the cathedral. Our job is to maintain it." Without Cruyff, modern Barcelona may never have existed. And without Barcelona's philosophy, football itself may look very different today. Cruyff believed football should entertain people. He famously said, "Playing football is very simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing there is." Those words became a blueprint for generations of players and coaches. Football also remained central to Cruyff's family life. His son, Jordi Cruyff, followed in his footsteps and became a professional footballer, playing for clubs including FC Barcelona and Manchester United FC. Jordi later moved into coaching and football management, continuing the Cruyff football legacy into another generation. Across both his playing and managerial careers, Cruyff inspired millions through intelligence, innovation, and fearless creativity. He wasn't the strongest player. He wasn't the fastest. But he saw football differently from everyone else. Johan Cruyff passed away in 2016 after battling cancer, but his influence remains everywhere in modern football, from youth academies to Champions League finals. Every time a team dominates possession, every time defenders step into midfield, every time a player performs the Cruyff turn, his legacy lives on. That is why Johan Cruyff will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because he won trophies, not just because he entertained millions, but because he changed football forever. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, where does Johan Cruyff rank among the greatest football minds of all time?
Picture this. A striker barely moving. Hands on hips. Looking almost uninterested. Then in a single second, the game changes. One touch. One finish. One goal. That was Romario. Not the tallest. Not the fastest. Not the strongest. But inside the penalty area, he was footballing perfection. Defenders feared him. Goalkeepers hated him. And Brazil adored him. Today, we're looking at the story of one of football's greatest natural goalscorers, Romario. Born in the tough streets of Rio de Janeiro in 1966, Romario grew up playing football anywhere he could. Small spaces, concrete pitches, crowded streets. That environment shaped him. It sharpened his reactions, his balance, his close control, and most importantly, his killer instinct. Very early on, people realized this kid was different. Not flashy for the sake of it. Not wasting energy. Everything he did had purpose. Romario started making headlines with Vasco da Gama in Brazil. Goals came naturally. Every type of finish imaginable. Tap-ins, dinks, headers, toe pokes, calm finishes under pressure. He didn't need many touches. Sometimes he only needed one. Soon Europe came calling. And in 1988, he joined PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands. For many South American players, Adapting to Europe was difficult. But not for Romario. Goals followed him everywhere. At PSV, he became one of the most feared forwards in Europe. Defenders struggled with his movement because he never seemed rushed. He would drift quietly between defenders, waiting, then explode into space at exactly the right moment. He scored over 100 goals for PSV and won multiple league titles. But more than the numbers, it was how he scored. Everything looked effortless, almost casual. Then came Barcelona. In 1993, Johan Cruyff brought Romario to Spain to join the famous Dream Team. And together, it was magic. Cruyff loved intelligent footballers, players who understood timing, space, and movement. Romario had all three. The 1993-94 season became legendary. Romario destroyed defenders across Spain. He scored hat-tricks, embarrassed centre-backs, and helped Barcelona win La Liga. One moment especially defined him. Against Real Madrid, Romario received the ball with his back to goal. In one movement, he flicked the ball through a defender's legs, spun around and finished calmly. It wasn't just skill. It was genius. That goal remains one of the most iconic moments in El Clasico history. But Romario's greatest stage came with Brazil. The 1994 World Cup. Brazil entered the tournament desperate. It had been 24 years since they last won the World Cup. Pressure covered the entire nation. And Romario carried that pressure on his shoulders. Alongside Bebeto, he formed one of football's greatest partnerships. The two seemed to understand each other without speaking. Romario wasn't just scoring goals. He was controlling matches with intelligence. His positioning was unbelievable. He always seemed to appear exactly where the ball would land. Against Sweden in the semi-final, Brazil struggled to break through. Then Romario rose between defenders and powered home a header. One goal. One moment. Brazil were in the final. In the final against Italy, the match ended 0-0. Tension everywhere. One mistake could decide everything. Brazil won on penalties. And Romario became a world champion. He finished the tournament as one of its greatest players and won the FIFA World Player of the Year. For many fans, that World Cup confirmed what they already believed. Romario was one of the deadliest strikers the game had ever seen. What made him so special wasn't just technique. It was football intelligence. Romario understood space better than almost anyone. He knew when defenders switched off. He knew where rebounds would fall. He knew exactly when to move. Some strikers run endlessly. Romario didn't need to. His brain did the running for him. Inside the box, he was always 2 steps ahead. And his confidence? Unmatched. Romario once claimed he scored over 1,000 goals in his career. Whether people agreed with the number or not almost didn't matter. Because when you watched him play, it felt believable. But Romario was never a traditional superstar. He didn't always love training. He sometimes clashed with managers. He lived life his own way. Yet somehow, when match day arrived, he delivered. Again and again. That unpredictability became part of his legend. Fans never knew what Romario might say off the pitch. But on it, they knew goals were coming. After Barcelona, he played for clubs across the world including Flamengo, Valencia, and Miami FC. Even as he got older, the finishing never disappeared. Because true goalscorers don't lose instinct. And Romario's instincts were among the greatest ever. Modern football often celebrates athletes. Players who cover huge distances. Who sprint endlessly. Who dominate physically. Romario reminded the world that football is also about timing, creativity, calmness, and intelligence. He made scoring look simple, even though it's one of the hardest things in sport. And that's why defenders feared him so much. Because no matter how quiet he seemed, the danger was always there. One chance. One finish. Goal. Romario wasn't just a great Brazilian striker. He was one of football's purest finishers. A player who proved genius doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits silently in the penalty area. And when the moment comes, it strikes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Was Romario the most natural finisher football has ever seen?
When football fans debate the greatest forwards in Premier League history, one name is always at the center of the conversation. Thierry Henry. Fast. Elegant. Intelligent. Ruthless. Henry didn't just score goals, he made football look beautiful. For many fans, he was the complete forward. Born on August 17, 1977, in Les Ulis, a suburb outside Paris, Henry grew up surrounded by football. From a young age, his speed and technical ability stood out immediately. He idolized Brazilian striker Ronaldo Nazário and dreamed of becoming one of the world's best players himself. Henry began his professional career with AS Monaco FC under legendary manager Arsène Wenger. Wenger immediately recognized Henry's raw talent, but early in his career he played mostly as a winger rather than a central forward. Even then, his pace terrified defenders. Henry helped Monaco win the French league title in 1997 and soon became one of Europe's brightest young talents. His performances earned him a place in the French squad for the 1998 FIFA World Cup on home soil. France would go on to win the tournament, giving Henry his first major international trophy at just 20 years old. 2 years later, he helped France win UEFA Euro 2000, becoming part of one of the greatest international teams football had ever seen. Despite his growing reputation, Henry's career nearly stalled after a difficult spell at Juventus in Italy. Used out of position and struggling for confidence, many questioned whether he could truly become a world-class player. But in 1999, Arsène Wenger brought Henry to Arsenal. That transfer changed football history. Wenger transformed Thierry Henry from a wide player into a complete forward, and the Premier League would never be the same again. At Arsenal, he became unstoppable. Defenders could not handle his combination of speed, skill, movement, intelligence, and finishing ability. He could score from anywhere: long-range strikes, curling finishes, solo runs, chips, volleys. And somehow, he always made it look effortless. Henry once said, "I always believed I could become the best." At Arsenal, he proved it. Alongside stars like Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp, and Robert Pires, Henry became the face of Wenger's revolutionary Arsenal side. The peak came during the famous 2003-04 Invincibles season. Arsenal went the entire Premier League campaign unbeaten, a feat almost impossible in modern football. Henry was the team's superstar. His movement was extraordinary. He drifted into wide areas, dropped deep, created chances, and scored goals at an incredible rate. But what truly separated him from other forwards was his intelligence. He knew exactly when to accelerate, exactly where defenders were weakest, exactly when to pass and when to shoot. Combined with his calm finishing and incredible consistency, it made him almost impossible to stop. Former defender Jamie Carragher once admitted, "Thierry Henry was the best player I ever faced." That opinion is shared by many defenders from that era. During his time at Arsenal, Henry won 2 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cups, 4 Premier League Golden Boots. And he became Arsenal's all-time leading goalscorer with 228 goals. One of his most iconic moments came against Tottenham Hotspur. In 2002, when he picked the ball up in his own half, sprinted past defenders, and finished brilliantly in front of the home crowd at Highbury. The celebration became legendary. Hands out wide. Pure passion. Pure confidence. Thierry Henry didn't just score important goals. He created moments football fans would never forget. In 2007, Henry joined FC Barcelona, where he added another major chapter to his career. Playing alongside Lionel Messi, Xavi, and Andrés Iniesta, Henry helped Barcelona win the historic treble in 2009, including the UEFA Champions League. Even in a team full of superstars, Henry's intelligence and experience remained vital. For France, he became the country's record goalscorer for many years and earned over 120 international caps. He played in multiple World Cups and European Championships and remained one of the most important players of his generation. After retiring, Henry moved into coaching, punditry, and football analysis. His understanding of the game impressed many fans and players, with younger footballers often studying his movement and attacking intelligence. But statistics alone do not explain Thierry Henry's greatness. It was the elegance, the speed, the intelligence, the consistency. Very few footballers combined style and effectiveness the way Henry did. He could entertain crowds while destroying the best defenders in the world. That is why Thierry Henry will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the goals. Not just because of the trophies. But because he made football feel like art, and it was fun. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Thierry Henry the greatest Premier League forward of all time? Ruud Gullit, the footballer who changed everything. Before football became faster, stronger, and more tactical, there was Ruud Gullit, a player who seemed ahead of his time. Powerful like a defender, elegant like a playmaker, clinical like a striker. Ruud Gullit wasn't just a footballer. He was a revolution. Born in Amsterdam in 1962, Gullit grew up playing football on the streets. It was there he developed the creativity, confidence, and freedom that would later define his game. Football wasn't just sport in Amsterdam. It was identity. And from a young age, he stood out. Tall, athletic, fearless on the ball. He could glide past defenders, dominate physically, and control matches with intelligence far beyond his years. But his journey wasn't always easy. Growing up as a mixed-race child in the Netherlands, Gullit experienced racism from an early age. Instead of breaking him, it made him stronger. Football became his escape. And eventually, his platform. Gullit began his professional career with HFC Haarlem, before moving to bigger Dutch clubs including Feyenoord and PSV Eindhoven. Everywhere he went, he improved. Goals, leadership, energy. He wasn't confined to one position. He could play anywhere. And that made him dangerous. By the mid-1980s, Europe had taken notice. Then came the move that changed everything. AC Milan. At the time, Italian football was the toughest league in the world. Defensive, physical, tactically ruthless. But Ruud thrived. Under legendary manager Arrigo Sacchi, Milan became one of the greatest teams football had ever seen. Alongside fellow Dutch stars Marco van Basten and Frank Rijkaard, Gullit helped redefine modern football. Fast pressing, fluid movement, total control. Sacchi once said, Gullit changed football because he could play anywhere and dominate. And he was right. Gullit wasn't just talented. He was complete. Marco van Basten described him perfectly. Ruud could do everything. He was powerful, technical, intelligent, complete. In 1987, Gullit won the Ballon d'Or, one of the greatest individual honors in football. But what made the moment unforgettable was his speech. Gullit dedicated the award to Nelson Mandela, who was still imprisoned at the time. It was bigger than football. It showed courage, leadership, and character. Then came the greatest moment of his international career. UEFA Euro 1988. 4 years. The Netherlands had produced incredible players, but never won a major tournament. That changed in 1988. Led by captain Ruud Gullit, the Dutch played fearless football. In the final against the Soviet Union, Gullit scored a powerful header. And moments later, Van Basten scored one of the greatest volleys football has ever seen. The Netherlands were champions of Europe. Gullit later said, "Winning with the Netherlands was something we dreamed about for years." For many fans, it was the peak of Dutch football. At club level, the success continued. Back-to-back European Cups, league titles, domestic trophies. But Gullit's influence went beyond winning. He changed how people viewed footballers. He had style, personality, confidence. He looked different, played different, acted different, and fans loved him for it. Later in his career, Gullit moved to England to join Chelsea. At the time, English football was changing, and Ruud became one of the faces of that transformation. As player-manager, he brought professionalism, continental ideas, and belief. He helped modernize Chelsea before the billionaire era ever began. For many supporters, he laid the foundations for the club's future success. What made Ruud Gullit truly special was that he represented more than football. Freedom, creativity, confidence. He proved footballers could have personality, could speak out, could inspire. And decades later, his influence can still be seen in the modern game. Strong midfielders, versatile attackers, complete footballers, players who can do everything. Ruud Gullit helped create that vision. Franco Baresi once said, "He brought strength and elegance together in a way nobody else could." And perhaps that is the perfect description of Ruud Gullit. A player ahead of his time. A leader. A revolutionary. And above all else, a true footballing icon. This has been another story from True Footballing Icons. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Who is your true footballing icon? When football fans talk about the greatest midfielders in Premier League history, one name is impossible to ignore: Frank Lampard. A midfielder who scored goals like a striker, a leader who delivered in the biggest moments, and a player who transformed himself from doubted youngster into a football legend. For many Chelsea fans, Lampard is the greatest player the club has ever produced. Born on June 20, 1978, in London, Lampard came from a football family. His father, Frank Lampard Sr., was a respected defender for West Ham United FC, while his uncle, Harry Redknapp, would later manage him. Because of those connections, many critics unfairly claimed young Frank only got opportunities because of his family name. Lampard heard the criticism constantly. Too slow. Not talented enough. Only in the team because of nepotism. Those doubts would fuel him for the rest of his career. Lampard made his professional debut for West Ham in 1996 and gradually developed into one of England's brightest midfield talents. His work ethic quickly became famous. While other players relied on natural ability, Lampard trained relentlessly to improve every aspect of his game. Former teammates often spoke about his obsession with practice. Shooting drills, fitness sessions, extra training after matches. Lampard later said, "Talent is not enough. You need something else to push you." In 2001, Lampard made the move that changed his life forever when he signed for Chelsea FC. At the time, Chelsea were not yet the powerhouse they would later become. But everything changed after the arrival of owner Roman Abramovich in 2003. Alongside stars like John Terry, Didier Drogba, Petr Cech, and Claude Makélélé, Lampard became a central figure in one of the greatest eras in Chelsea history. Under manager Jose Mourinho, Chelsea dominated English football, and Lampard became unstoppable. What separated Lampard from many midfielders was his football intelligence. He read the game brilliantly, understood space better than almost anyone, and timed his attacking runs to perfection. Again and again, he would arrive in the box at exactly the right moment while defenders focused on the strikers around him. That timing became one of his deadliest weapons. Lampard also brought incredible consistency. Season after season, regardless of the manager, system, or players around him, he delivered goals, assists, leadership, and world-class performances. Very few midfielders in football history maintained such high standards for so long. Season after season, he scored incredible numbers of goals from midfield. Long-range strikes, late runs into the box, penalties, volleys. Lampard could score every type of goal imaginable. Mourinho once described Lampard as one of the best players in the world. During his career at Chelsea, Lampard won 3 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, UEFA Champions League and a UEFA Europa League. But perhaps his most astonishing achievement was becoming Chelsea's all-time leading goalscorer. A midfielder, Lampard scored 211 goals for Chelsea, breaking the long-standing record held by Bobby Tambling. That record alone showed how unique he truly was. One of the defining moments of Lampard's career came in the 2012 UEFA Champions League campaign. After years of heartbreak in Europe, Chelsea finally reached the final against FC Bayern Munich in Munich. Against the odds, Chelsea won the trophy on penalties, giving Lampard the biggest prize of his club career. As vice-captain, he lifted the Champions League trophy alongside John Terry in one of the greatest nights in Chelsea history. Lampard's partnership with Drogba became legendary, while his midfield rivalry with Steven Gerrard and Paul Scholes defined an era of Premier League football. For England, Lampard earned 106 caps and scored 29 goals, representing his country at multiple World Cups and European Championships. Although England never achieved the success many hoped for during the so-called Golden Generation, Lampard still produced unforgettable moments in an England shirt. One of football's biggest controversies also involved him. At the 2010 FIFA World Cup against Germany national football team, Lampard scored a perfectly legitimate goal that crossed the line clearly before bouncing out, but the goal was not given. The incident increased calls for goal line technology, which football later introduced worldwide. After leaving Chelsea in 2014, Lampard had spells with Manchester City and New York City FC before retiring in 2017. Even late in his career, his professionalism and fitness remained remarkable. Football also remained central to the Lampard family. Frank's cousin is Jamie Redknapp, while his family's deep connection to football helped shape his understanding of the game from childhood. After retiring, Lampard moved into management. He first impressed at Derby County by guiding them to the Championship playoff final before eventually returning to Chelsea as manager. He later managed Everton during a difficult period for the club, helping them avoid relegation in dramatic fashion. In 2024, Lampard took charge of Coventry City and guided the club to promotion, adding another important achievement to his growing managerial career and showing his determination to succeed from the dugout just as he had as a player. Although his managerial career has had mixed success so far, many players and fans still praise Lampard for his leadership, professionalism, and understanding of football. But Frank Lampard's legacy was built long before management. It was built through intelligence, timing, consistency, goals, leadership. He wasn't the flashiest footballer. He wasn't the quickest. But few players worked harder to maximize their talent. That relentless mentality turned him into one of football's greatest midfielders. And that is why Frank Lampard will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the trophies. Not just because of the goals. But because he proved that dedication, intelligence, and consistency can take a player to the very top of world football. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, where does Frank Lampard rank among the greatest midfielders in football history?
When football fans talk about intelligence, elegance, and control in midfield, one name always enters the conversation. Andrea Pirlo. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. And he rarely looked under pressure. But somehow, Andrea Pirlo controlled football matches like a chess master. With a single pass, he could change an entire game. For many fans, Pirlo was football at its most intelligent. Born on May 19, 1979, in Flero, Italy, Pirlo grew up obsessed with football. Even as a child, his vision and technique stood out immediately. While most young players relied on energy and pace, Pirlo relied on calmness and intelligence. He always seemed to have more time than everyone else. Pirlo began his professional career with Brescia Calcio before moving to FC Internazionale Milano. But early in his career, many managers struggled to understand his best position. He was considered too slow, too lightweight, too relaxed. At times, people doubted whether he could succeed at the highest level. Everything changed when legendary manager Carlo Ancelotti moved Pirlo deeper into midfield. That decision transformed football history. Instead of playing close to goal, Pirlo became a deep-lying playmaker, controlling matches from deep positions with passing, vision, rhythm, and composure. At AC Milan, Pirlo became the heartbeat of one of the greatest teams of his generation. Alongside legends like Paolo Maldini, Kaká, Clarence Seedorf, and Gennaro Gattuso, Pirlo dictated games with extraordinary calmness. Gattuso once joked, "I do the running so Pirlo can think." That perfectly summed up Pirlo's role. He played football almost like an artist. Long passes, perfect through balls, dangerous free kicks, complete control of tempo. Very few players in football history could slow the game down the way Pirlo could. During his time at Milan, Pirlo won 2 Champions League titles, 2 Serie A titles, FIFA Club World Cup, and he became recognized as one of the greatest midfielders in world football. One of the defining moments of his career came during the 2006 FIFA World Cup with Italy. Pirlo was magnificent throughout the tournament. In the final against France's national football team, he controlled possession under enormous pressure and later calmly scored his penalty in the shootout. Italy became world champions. Pirlo finished the tournament with 116 completed passes in the final alone, and was named one of the competition's best players. But what truly separated Pirlo from other midfielders was his mentality. Nothing seemed to panic him. In his autobiography, Pirlo famously wrote, "I don't feel pressure. I spent the afternoon of the World Cup final playing PlayStation." That quote perfectly captured his personality. Cool, relaxed, completely fearless. After leaving Milan in 2011, many believed Pirlo's career was slowing down. Instead, he joined Juventus FC and completely transformed the club. Juventus went from struggling giants to dominant champions again, with Pirlo at the center of everything. At Juventus, he added 4 Serie A titles, 2 Coppa Italia trophies, another Champions League final appearance. Once again, Pirlo controlled football matches with elegance few players could match. During his career, Andrea Pirlo made more than 850 professional appearances, scored over 70 goals, and produced countless assists through vision and creativity. But statistics alone cannot explain his greatness. It was the calmness, the intelligence, the rhythm. Former teammate Gianluigi Buffon once said, "Pirlo's feet should be kept in a museum." That is how highly he was respected by fellow professionals. After leaving Europe, Pirlo spent his final playing years with New York City FC before moving into coaching and management. But long before retirement, his football legacy was already secure. Because Andrea Pirlo changed how people understood midfield football. He proved that intelligence could dominate matches just as much as pace or power. That is why Andrea Pirlo will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the trophies. Not just because of the records. But because he made football look effortless. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, follow or subscribe to the channel so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Andrea Pirlo one of the greatest midfielders football has ever seen? When football fans talk about longevity, evolution, and greatness at Manchester United, one name stands above almost everyone else. Ryan Giggs. Fast, fearless, elegant. For over 2 decades, Giggs entertained football fans with dazzling dribbling, incredible assists, and unforgettable goals. And while football constantly changed around him, Ryan Giggs somehow remained at the top. Born on November 29, 1973, in Cardiff, Wales, Giggs moved to Manchester as a child and quickly showed extraordinary football talent from a young age. Legend says that when legendary Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson first saw Giggs play as a teenager, he immediately knew he had discovered someone special. Giggs joined Manchester United's youth academy and became part of the famous class of '92 generation alongside players like David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, and Nicky Butt. But even among that legendary group, Giggs stood out. His speed was terrifying. His balance looked effortless. And defenders simply could not stop him 1-against-1. Giggs made his first team debut for Manchester United in 1991 and quickly became one of the most exciting young players in English football. With his flowing hair, explosive pace, and fearless attacking style, he became an instant fan favourite at Old Trafford. Former defender Paolo Maldini once said, "The toughest opponent I ever faced was Ryan Giggs." That level of praise showed just how dangerous Giggs was at his peak. Under Ferguson, Manchester United entered the most successful era in the club's history, and Giggs became one of its most important players. Season after season, he delivered goals, assists, and moments of brilliance in the biggest matches. One of the most iconic moments of his entire career came in the 1999 FA Cup semi-final replay against Arsenal. Picking the ball up near the halfway line, Giggs burst through the Arsenal defence, beating multiple players before smashing the ball into the roof of the net. The celebration, shirt spinning above his head in front of the Manchester United supporters, became one of the most famous moments in English football history. That same season, Manchester United completed the historic treble: Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. In the 1999 Champions League final against FC Bayern Munich, Giggs was still the flying winger, direct, energetic, and explosive. But what made Ryan Giggs truly special was his ability to evolve. By the time Manchester United reached another Champions League final in 2008 against Chelsea, Giggs had transformed completely as a player. The explosive winger had become a calm midfield conductor. His game intelligence, passing range, composure, and understanding of space allowed him to control matches in a completely different way. Instead of relying purely on pace, Giggs adapted through experience and football intelligence. That evolution helped extend his career far beyond most wide players. Giggs once said, "You have to adapt as you get older." And few players in football history adapted better. During his incredible Manchester United career, Ryan Giggs made 963 appearances, scored 168 goals, and produced more than 250 assists across all competitions, remarkable numbers for a player who spent most of his career creating chances for others. His consistency was extraordinary. Generation after generation of footballers came and went, but Giggs remained part of Manchester United's success. During his career, Giggs won 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions League trophies, 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, and a FIFA Club World Cup. He also became Manchester United's all-time appearance holder, and the first player to score in 21 consecutive Premier League seasons. He played alongside legends from completely different eras, from Eric Cantona and Roy Keane to Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. For Wales, Giggs carried enormous expectations for many years. Although the national team often struggled to qualify for major tournaments during his playing career, Giggs remained one of the greatest Welsh footballers ever produced, earning 64 caps for his country. After retiring in 2014, he briefly became Manchester United's interim manager before moving into coaching and management. But Ryan Giggs' legacy was already secure long before retirement, because he represented something football rarely sees now: evolution. Consistency. Longevity. Very few footballers remain elite across multiple football generations. Giggs did exactly that. From the fearless winger of the 1990s to the intelligent midfield creator, he constantly reinvented himself to stay at the highest level. And by the time he retired, Ryan Giggs had become the most decorated player in Manchester United FC history. More than 900 appearances, 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions League trophies, countless unforgettable moments. A career that defined an era at Old Trafford. That is why Ryan Giggs will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the trophies, not just because of the records, but because he evolved, adapted, and became one of the greatest servants Manchester United, and football itself, has ever seen. Where does Ryan Giggs rank among the greatest wingers in football history? When football fans talk about joy, freedom, and magic on a football pitch, one player's name always appears above the rest. Ronaldinho. He didn't just play football. He made people fall in love with it. With a smile on his face and a ball at his feet, Ronaldinho turned football into art. Tricks, flicks, impossible passes, outrageous goals. He played the game with an imagination few players in history could match. For many fans, Ronaldinho was football at its purest. Born on March 21, 1980, in Porto Alegre, Brazil, Ronaldinho grew up surrounded by football. His father worked at a shipyard and was also involved with a local football club, while his older brother Roberto Assis became an important influence on his career. But Ronaldinho's childhood also included heartbreak. When he was just 8 years old, his father tragically died after suffering a heart attack. The loss deeply affected Ronaldinho and his family, but football became both an escape and a purpose. Even as a child, his talent looked unbelievable. Stories quickly spread across Brazil about a young boy humiliating defenders with outrageous skills and impossible dribbles. It did not take long before the football world noticed him. Ronaldinho began his professional career with Grêmio FBPA, where his skill and creativity immediately made him one of Brazil's brightest young stars. By the late 1990s, he was already becoming famous for tricks that most players would never even attempt. Stepovers, no-look passes, elastic dribbles, rainbow flicks. Ronaldinho played without fear. In 2001, he moved to Europe to join Paris Saint-Germain. Although his time in France was inconsistent, flashes of brilliance showed the world what was coming. Then came the 2002 FIFA World Cup. Playing alongside Ronaldo Nazário and Rivaldo, Ronaldinho became part of Brazil's legendary attacking trio. One moment from that tournament became unforgettable. Against England national football team in the quarter-finals, Ronaldinho scored one of the most famous goals in World Cup history, a stunning long-range free kick that flew over goalkeeper David Seaman. Brazil would go on to win the World Cup, giving Ronaldinho the biggest prize in football at just 22 years old. But the best years of his career were still ahead. In 2003, Ronaldinho joined FC Barcelona. At the time, Barcelona was struggling both financially and on the pitch. The club needed hope. Ronaldinho gave them belief again. Almost instantly, Barcelona transformed into one of the most exciting teams in world football. Ronaldinho played with freedom and joy that defenders simply could not handle. Every match felt unpredictable because nobody knew what he might do next. No-look passes, backheel assists, impossible dribbles, goals from impossible angles. And somehow, he always played with a smile. Former teammate Lionel Messi later said, "Ronaldinho changed Barcelona." Many people inside the club believe he laid the foundation for Barcelona's modern golden era. During his time at Barcelona, Ronaldinho won 2 La Liga titles, UEFA Champions League, Ballon d'Or, and 2 FIFA World Player of the Year awards. At his peak, he was widely considered the best footballer on the planet. One of the most iconic moments of his career came in 2005 against Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu. After destroying Madrid's defense with 2 brilliant goals, even Real Madrid supporters stood up and applauded him. Very few visiting players in football history have received that level of respect inside Madrid Stadium. What made Ronaldinho special was not just his skill. It was the joy. Football looked fun when he played. Children copied his tricks in playgrounds across the world. Fans watched matches simply hoping to see him produce something unforgettable. He inspired an entire generation of footballers. Players like Messi and Neymar grew up idolizing him. But Ronaldinho's career also showed how difficult it is to stay at the top forever. As the years passed, injuries, fitness issues, and lifestyle choices began affecting his performances. Although he still produced moments of brilliance later with clubs like AC Milan and Club Atletico Mineiro, many fans believe his absolute peak ended too soon. Even so, his legacy never faded, because Ronaldinho gave football something statistics cannot measure: happiness. He reminded the world why people fall in love with football in the first place. Not just to win, not just for trophies, but for creativity, freedom, joy. That is why Ronaldinho will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because he won trophies, not just because he was one of the greatest players in the world, but because he made football magical. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like. And let us know in the comments, was Ronaldinho the most entertaining footballer of all time? When football fans talk about longevity, evolution, and greatness at Manchester United, one name stands above almost everyone else: Ryan Giggs. Fast, fearless, elegant. For over 2 decades, Giggs entertained football fans with dazzling dribbling, incredible assists, and unforgettable goals. And while football constantly changed around him, Ryan Giggs somehow remained at the top. Born on November 29, 1973, in Cardiff, Wales, Giggs moved to Manchester as a child and quickly showed extraordinary football talent from a young age. Legend says that when legendary Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson first saw Giggs play as a teenager, he immediately knew he had discovered someone special. Giggs joined Manchester United's youth academy and became part of the famous class of '92 generation alongside players like David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, and Nicky Butt. But even among that legendary group, Giggs stood out. His speed was terrifying. His balance looked effortless. And defenders simply could not stop him 1-against-1. Giggs made his first team debut for Manchester United in 1991 and quickly became one of the most exciting young players in English football. With his flowing hair, explosive pace, and fearless attacking style, he became an instant fan favourite at Old Trafford. Former defender Paolo Maldini once said, "The toughest opponent I ever faced was Ryan Giggs." That level of praise showed just how dangerous Giggs was at his peak. Under Ferguson, Manchester United entered the most successful era in the club's history, and Giggs became one of its most important players. Season after season, he delivered goals, assists, and moments of brilliance in the biggest matches. One of the most iconic moments of his entire career came in the 1999 FA Cup semi-final replay against Arsenal. Picking the ball up near the halfway line, Giggs burst through the Arsenal defence, beating multiple players before smashing the ball into the roof of the net. The celebration, shirt spinning above his head in front of the Manchester United supporters, became one of the most famous moments in English football history. That same season, Manchester United completed the historic treble: Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. In the 1999 Champions League final against FC Bayern Munich, Giggs was still the flying winger, direct, energetic, and explosive. But what made Ryan Giggs truly special was his ability to evolve. By the time Manchester United reached another Champions League final in 2008 against Chelsea, Giggs had transformed completely as a player. The explosive winger had become a calm midfield conductor. His game intelligence, passing range, composure, and understanding of space allowed him to control matches in a completely different way. Instead of relying purely on pace, Giggs adapted through experience and football intelligence. That evolution helped extend his career far beyond most wide players. Giggs once said, "You have to adapt as you get older." And few players in football history adapted better. During his incredible Manchester United career, Ryan Giggs made 963 appearances, scored 168 goals, and produced more than 250 assists across all competitions, remarkable numbers for a player who spent most of his career creating chances for others. His consistency was extraordinary. Generation after generation of footballers came and went, but Giggs remained part of Manchester United's success. During his career, Giggs won 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions League trophies, 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, and a FIFA Club World Cup. He also became Manchester United's all-time appearance holder, and the first player to score in 21 consecutive Premier League seasons. He played alongside legends from completely different eras, from Eric Cantona and Roy Keane to Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. For Wales, Giggs carried enormous expectations for many years. Although the national team often struggled to qualify for major tournaments during his playing career, Giggs remained one of the greatest Welsh footballers ever produced, earning 64 caps for his country. After retiring in 2014, he briefly became Manchester United's interim manager before moving into coaching and management. But Ryan Giggs' legacy was already secure long before retirement, because he represented something football rarely sees now: evolution, consistency, longevity. Very few footballers remain elite across multiple football generations. Giggs did exactly that. From the fearless winger of the 1990s to the intelligent midfield creator, he constantly reinvented himself to stay at the highest level. And by the time he retired, Ryan Giggs had become the most decorated player in Manchester United FC history. More than 900 appearances, 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions League trophies, countless unforgettable moments. A career that defined an era at Old Trafford. That is why Ryan Giggs will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the trophies, not just because of the records, but because he evolved, adapted, and became one of the greatest servants Manchester United, and football itself, has ever seen. Where does Ryan Giggs rank among the greatest wingers in football history? Football remembers the missed penalty. But Roberto Baggio was so much more than one moment. To millions of football fans around the world, he represented something deeper than trophies or statistics. He represented beauty, emotion, artistry, and heartbreak. With his iconic ponytail, magical touch, and quiet personality, he became one of the most loved footballers of all time. Not because football gave him an easy journey, but because he suffered, and still produced magic. Born on February 18, 1967, in Caldogno, Italy, Baggio grew up in a large working-class family and quickly developed an obsession with football. Even as a child, his talent looked extraordinary. He played with elegance, with imagination, with freedom. There was something poetic about the way he moved across a football pitch. At just 15 years old, he was already attracting attention from professional clubs across Italy. He began his career with LR Vicenza before earning a major move to ACF Fiorentina. But before he could even fully begin his rise, disaster struck. At only 18 years old, Baggio suffered a devastating knee injury that nearly destroyed his career before it had truly started. Doctors feared he might never become the same player again. But he fought through pain, rehabilitation, and doubt. That resilience would define his entire life. At Fiorentina, Baggio quickly became adored by supporters. His dribbling looked effortless. His free kicks felt artistic. And his creativity separated him from almost every player in world football. Fans did not just admire Baggio. They felt emotionally connected to him. In 1990, he transferred to Juventus in what became one of the most controversial transfers in Italian football history. Fiorentina fans were devastated. Some even rioted in the streets. That showed how deeply football supporters loved him. At Juventus, Baggio reached another level entirely. He won Serie A, UEFA Cup, Coppa Italia, and in 1993, Roberto Baggio won the Ballon d'Or as the best footballer in the world. At his peak, Baggio combined vision, elegance, dribbling, creativity and goals better than almost anyone of his era. Former manager Marcello Lippi once described him as a player touched by God. And sometimes, watching Baggio play, it genuinely felt true. But no chapter defines Roberto Baggio more than the 1994 FIFA World Cup. Italy struggled early in the tournament. Criticism surrounded the team. Then Roberto took control. Almost single-handedly. He carried Italy through the knockout stages. Against Nigeria. Against Spain. Against Bulgaria. Again and again, he delivered when Italy needed him most. Playing through pain, exhausted physically, carrying enormous national pressure, he still produced moments of brilliance. By the time Italy reached the final against Brazil, Baggio had become the soul of the tournament. But football can be cruel. After a tense final finished scoreless, the World Cup would be decided by penalties. Baggio stepped forward knowing Italy had to score. And then came the moment football history would never forget. The ball flew over the crossbar. Brazil became world champions. And Roberto Baggio stood alone beneath the California sky. One image. One moment. One heartbreak seen around the world. For many players, that would have destroyed them forever. But what made him so special was not perfection. It was humanity. Years later, Baggio said, "Penalties are only missed by those who have the courage to take them." That quote perfectly captured who he was. Despite injuries constantly damaging his body throughout his career, Baggio continued producing moments of genius with AC Milan, Bologna, Internazionale Milano, and Brescia Calcio. At Brescia especially, older and slower physically, Baggio reinvented himself through intelligence and creativity. Even late in his career, stadiums still filled with fans wanting to witness his magic one last time. Across his professional career, Roberto Baggio scored more than 300 goals and created countless unforgettable moments. But statistics alone can never explain why football still loves him so deeply. Because Baggio represented something rare. Beauty mixed with vulnerability. Genius mixed with pain. Very few footballers are remembered emotionally decades after retirement. Roberto Baggio is. To this day, many football fans still speak about him with sadness, admiration, and affection all at once. Because he reminded the world that football is not only about winning. Sometimes football is about emotion. About memory. About humanity. That is why Roberto Baggio will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just his ponytail. Not because of the trophies. Not because of the Ballon d'Or. But because he made millions of people feel something every time he touched a football. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Roberto Baggio football's greatest tragic genius? Some footballers wanted admiration. Some wanted trophies. But Stuart Pearce wanted battle. To football fans across England, Stuart Pearce represented something raw. Something fearless. Something real. Long before modern football became polished and commercial, Pearce played the game with intensity that bordered on madness. That is why football gave him a nickname that would follow him forever. Psycho. And once you watched him play, you understood why. Born on April 24, 1962, in London, Pearce's journey to football was far from glamorous. Unlike many future stars, he was rejected by professional clubs as a teenager. He worked as an electrician while playing non-league football, balancing normal life with his dream of becoming a professional. That struggle shaped him. It created the mentality supporters would later adore. Nothing came easy for Stuart Pearce. He never forgot those days as an electrician either. And because of that, he played every match like it might be his last. Pearce eventually joined Coventry City. Before making the move that defined his career, Nottingham Forest. Under legendary manager Brian Clough. The pairing felt perfect. Clough admired strong personalities. And Pearce had one of the strongest football had ever seen. At Forest, Pearce became a cult hero. Fans loved his aggression. Desire to win. A thunderous left foot. The fearless tackling. And perhaps most famously, his refusal to show pain. One story perfectly captured the madness behind the Psycho nickname. During a match, Pearce suffered a broken leg and still tried to continue playing. Another time, he reportedly had his shirt stitched to his skin after a deep facial wound before returning to the pitch. To supporters, he looked indestructible. Former teammate Roy Keane once described Pearce as one of the toughest men I've ever seen in football. And toughness became his identity. But Pearce was far more than just aggression. He could play. His left foot was devastating. Free kicks, long-range strikes, crosses. He became one of the most dangerous attacking fullbacks of his generation. At Nottingham Forest, Pearce played more than 520 matches and scored over 80 goals, extraordinary numbers for a defender. Another nickname supporters often gave him was the last hard man of English football, because Pearce represented an era where commitment mattered more than celebrity. During his club career, Stuart Pearce made more than 740 professional appearances, scoring over 100 goals and contributing countless assists through dangerous crosses, free kicks, and attacking runs down the left side. But the most emotional chapter of Stuart Pearce's story came with England. At the 1990 FIFA World Cup semi-final against Germany, Pearce stepped forward during the penalty shootout. He missed. England were eliminated, and Pearce was devastated. Images of him crying after the defeat became one of English football's most painful memories, and still is. Years later in his autobiography, Pearce admitted how deeply that miss affected him. He carried the guilt for years. Many players would have hidden from another moment like that. Pearce faced it head-on. And that is why Euro 96 became football redemption. Again, England faced a major penalty shootout. Again, Stuart Pearce stepped forward. This time, he smashed the ball into the net with pure fury. Then came the celebration. The scream. The clenched fists. The explosion of emotion. It became one of the most iconic celebrations in football history. For millions of fans, it was more than just a penalty. It was redemption. Pain released. A nation, and many millions of neutrals around the world erupting with him. Commentator David Coleman famously shouted, "Pearce scores, and England are through." Even today, the moment still gives many England fans goosebumps. For England, Pearce earned 78 international caps, scoring 5 goals and producing numerous assists from set pieces and crosses during major tournaments and qualification campaigns. He represented his country at the 1990 FIFA World Cup, Euro 92, and Euro 96. And in every tournament, he played with the same fearless commitment supporters admired at club level. Pearce later played for Newcastle United, West Ham United, and Manchester City. And wherever he went, supporters respected him, even opposing fans did. Because Stuart Pearce represented honesty. No diving. No pretending. No shortcuts. Just total commitment. And who doesn't want that in their team? Even as a manager and coach later in football, Pearce carried the same intensity and emotional honesty that defined his playing career. But statistics alone never explained Stuart Pearce. Fans remembered the fearless tackles, the screaming celebrations, the blood and bandages, the thunderous free kicks, the emotional honesty. Supporters believed Stuart Pearce cared as much as they did, because he did. And perhaps that is why Psycho became one of the most beloved nicknames in football history. Because it never felt fake. It felt earned. That is why Stuart Pearce will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Because he played football with a level of passion supporters could genuinely feel. Was Stuart Pearce England's toughest ever left back? In modern football, loyalty is rare. But Francesco Totti gave his entire life to one club, and one city. Rome. To football fans across the world, Totti was more than just a footballer. He was identity, passion, loyalty. He was Roma itself. Known as Illinois Capitano, the captain, Totti became one of the most loved players football has ever seen. Not because he chased fame across Europe, but because he stayed. Again and again, while football changed around him. Francesco Totti stayed loyal to AS Roma. And in doing so, he became immortal. Born on September 27, 1976, in Rome, Italy, Totti grew up surrounded by football culture. From a young age, his talent was impossible to ignore. His touch, his vision, his creativity. Even as a child, Totti played with confidence and imagination beyond his years. Nicknamed a Bimbo d'Oro, the Golden Boy, by local fans, he quickly became one of Rome's brightest football hopes. At just 16 years old, Totti made his professional debut for Roma. Nobody could have imagined what would follow next. Because over the next 25 years, Francesco Totti would become one of football's greatest symbols of loyalty. As football entered an era of massive transfers and superstar contracts, Europe's biggest clubs came calling. Real Madrid wanted him. Other giants wanted him. But Totti refused to leave Rome. Again and again. Because for him, football was about more than trophies. It was about belonging. Former Roma manager Fabio Capello once said, "Totti sees football before everyone else." And watching him play, it often felt true. Totti combined creativity, vision, finishing, technique, leadership, with extraordinary calmness under pressure. He could score spectacular goals one moment, then deliver impossible passes the next. His famous chipped finishes became iconic across football. Fans called it the cucchiaio, the spoon, and few players ever performed it with more confidence than Totti. In 2001, Totti achieved the dream of every Roma supporter. As captain, he led Roma to the Serie A title, only the club's third league championship in history. Rome exploded with celebration. For many supporters, it remains the greatest football moment the city has ever experienced. Because their captain had delivered glory to his people. But Totti's story was never only about trophies. It was about connection. Few footballers have ever shared such a deep emotional bond with supporters. At the Stadio Olimpico, Totti was treated almost like royalty, the king of Rome. And for Roma fans, he truly was. Internationally, Totti also played a major role for Italy. At the 2006 FIFA World Cup, despite recovering from serious injury months earlier, Totti helped guide Italy national football team to World Cup glory. His calm penalty against Australia in the knockout stage became one of Italy's defining moments of the tournament. And when Italy lifted the World Cup in Berlin, Totti completed another chapter of his remarkable career. Across his time with Roma, Francesco Totti played more than 780 matches and scored over 300 goals. But statistics alone can never explain what he meant to football. Because Totti represented something disappearing from the modern game. Loyalty, identity, love for a club beyond money or fame. Even late in his career, as age slowed him physically, fans still packed stadiums simply to witness him one more time. One final pass. One final goal. One final glimpse of magic. And then came the farewell. In 2017, after more than 2 decades with Roma, Totti said goodbye to football. The stadium cried. Supporters cried. And Totti himself struggled through tears as he delivered his emotional farewell speech. Because an era was ending. For many football fans, it felt like the end of something bigger than just a career. The end of football romance itself. Former teammate Daniele De Rossi once said, "There will never be another Totti." And perhaps he was right. Because football may never again see a player give so much of himself to one club, one city, and one identity. That is why Francesco Totti will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the goals. Not just because of the trophies. But because he proved loyalty could still exist in modern football. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments. Is Francesco Totti the greatest one-club footballer of all time? Some footballers become legends. Some become icons. But only a select few become part of a city's soul. Kenny Dalglish wasn't simply Liverpool's greatest player. He became Liverpool's greatest ambassador. And that is why, to this day, they still call him King Kenny. Born in Glasgow on March 4, 1951, Dalglish grew up in a working-class family where football was more than a game, it was a way of life. As a boy, he supported Celtic. Little did he know that one day he would become one of the greatest players in the club's history. Dalglish joined Celtic as a teenager and quickly rose through the ranks. What stood out wasn't blistering pace or incredible physical strength. It was intelligence, awareness, vision, the ability to see opportunities before anyone else on the pitch. Legendary manager Jock Stein once said, "Kenny is the most naturally gifted player I've worked with." That praise was not given lightly. At Celtic, Dalglish won 4 league titles, for Scottish Cups, and became one of Scotland's brightest footballing stars. He scored 167 goals in 320 appearances and established himself as one of the finest forwards in Britain. But in 1977, his life changed forever. Liverpool had just sold their superstar, Kevin Keegan. Supporters were worried. How do you replace a Ballon d'Or winner? The answer arrived from Glasgow. Liverpool paid a British record fee for Kenny Dalglish. The pressure was enormous. Replacing Keegan seemed impossible. Yet Dalglish made Liverpool supporters forget about Keegan almost immediately. On his league debut at Anfield, he scored. It was the perfect beginning. And over the next decade, he would become the heartbeat of one of football's greatest teams. Dalglish wasn't just a goalscorer. He was a creator, a conductor, a footballing artist. His touch, vision, and intelligence set him apart from everyone around him. Former teammate Graham Souness once said, "Kenny saw passes nobody else could see." And Liverpool reaped the rewards. During his time at Anfield, Dalglish won Trophy 6 First Division titles, Trophy 3 European Cups, Trophy 4 League Cups, Trophy numerous Charity Shields and Super Cups. He played 515 matches for Liverpool and scored 172 goals. But statistics alone cannot explain his impact. Dalglish made football look simple, creating chances and moments of magic when Liverpool needed them most. One of the defining moments came in the 1978 European Cup final. Liverpool faced Club Brugge at Wembley. The match was tense. One chance would decide it. Dalglish received the ball, lifted it delicately over the goalkeeper and scored the winning goal. Liverpool were champions of Europe once again. It became one of the most iconic goals in the club's history. Meanwhile, Dalglish continued shining for Scotland. Across an incredible international career, he earned 102 caps and scored 30 goals for his country. For many years, he held Scotland's goal-scoring record, a mark he still shares with Denis Law. Many supporters still consider him Scotland's greatest ever player. Then came another challenge. In 1985, Liverpool made Dalglish player-manager. Few believed one man could handle both roles. Yet somehow, he thrived. In his first full season as player-manager, Liverpool won the League and FA Cup double. One of the greatest achievements in English football history. Dalglish's leadership was calm, measured, respectful. He never needed to shout to command respect. Players followed him because they trusted him, because he understood the game better than almost anyone. Then came the darkest chapter, the Hillsborough disaster. 97 Liverpool supporters lost their lives. The city was devastated. The club was devastated. And Kenny Dalglish found himself carrying responsibilities far greater than football. He attended funeral after funeral, sometimes several in a single day. He visited grieving families, supported parents, comforted children, listened when people needed someone to listen. Many Liverpool supporters believe this period revealed the true measure of the man. Not the footballer. Not the manager. The human being. Former Liverpool chairman David Morse once said, "Kenny carried the city on his shoulders." The emotional burden eventually became overwhelming. In 1991, Dalglish stepped down as Liverpool manager. Many believe the strain of Hillsborough played a major role. Yet his connection with Liverpool never faded. Because some people become bigger than football. And Kenny Dalglish had become exactly that. Across his playing career, he made more than 830 club appearances and scored over 330 goals. As a player and manager, he collected league titles, domestic cups, European cups, and countless individual honours. But ask Liverpool supporters what they remember most. Many won't mention trophies. They'll talk about dignity, compassion, leadership, loyalty, values that cannot be measured in statistics. That is why generations continue to sing his name. Why supporters still call him King Kenny. And why his legacy reaches far beyond Anfield. Because football remembers goals. Football remembers trophies. But the greatest figures are remembered for something deeper. Kenny Dalglish gave Scotland pride. He gave Liverpool glory. And when an entire city needed strength, he gave something even greater. That is why Kenny Dalglish will forever be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not simply the King of Anfield, but one of football's greatest gentlemen. Let us know in the comments, what's your best memory of Kenny Dalglish? Some footballers entertain. Some footballers inspire. But very few footballers make the game feel like art. Dennis Bergkamp did exactly that. Calm. Elegant. Intelligent. Bergkamp played football with a level of composure and imagination that almost looked impossible. Every touch had purpose. Every movement had thought. Every moment felt controlled. For many fans, Dennis Bergkamp was not simply a footballer. He was a football artist. Born on May 10, 1969, in Amsterdam, Netherlands, Bergkamp grew up inspired by total football, the revolutionary Dutch football philosophy created by legends like Johan Cruyff. From a young age, Bergkamp developed incredible technical ability and football intelligence. Unlike explosive players who relied on pace, Bergkamp relied on timing, awareness, and technique. He always seemed one step ahead of everyone else. Bergkamp joined the famous AFC Ajax Academy, where his talent quickly became impossible to ignore. At Ajax, he developed into one of Europe's brightest young players. Goals, assists, creativity, but above all, elegance. During his time in Amsterdam, Bergkamp won Eredivisie title in 89/90, KNVB Cup in 92, UEFA Cup in 93, and established himself as one of Europe's most gifted forwards. In 1993, Bergkamp moved to FC Internazionale Milano. At the time, Serie A was considered the toughest league in the world. But Italy proved difficult for Bergkamp. The tactical style restricted his freedom, and critics questioned whether he could truly dominate outside the Netherlands. For many players, that disappointment would have defined their career. But Dennis Bergkamp's story was only beginning. In 1995, Arsene Wenger arrived at Arsenal. Shortly after Bergkamp joined the club. Together, they transformed Arsenal forever. Bergkamp brought intelligence and technical brilliance rarely seen in English football at the time. Suddenly, Arsenal played with elegance, with movement, with creativity, and Bergkamp became the heartbeat of it all. Former teammate Thierry Henry once said, "He taught me everything." That shows how deeply Bergkamp influenced the next generation. At Arsenal, Bergkamp won 3 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, including the legendary invincible season of 2003-04, when Arsenal completed an entire league campaign unbeaten. But trophies alone do not explain Dennis Bergkamp's greatness. It was the moments, the impossible touches, the perfect assists, the genius decisions. And then, there was Newcastle. In 2002, against Newcastle United, Bergkamp scored what many consider one of the greatest Premier League goals ever. With one touch, he spun around the defender. With another, he calmly finished. Even today, the goal still looks impossible. Commentators called it genius. Fans called it magic. But for Bergkamp, it simply looked natural. Because he saw football differently. Bergkamp once famously said, "Behind every kick of the ball there has to be a thought." That quote perfectly captured his football philosophy. Everything was intelligent. Everything was controlled. Even his movement without the ball felt artistic. Off the pitch, Bergkamp remained quiet and private. One of the most unusual aspects of his career was his fear of flying, a fear so strong that he often refused to travel by plane. Because of this, Bergkamp missed certain away matches during his career. But rather than mock him, many fans respected his honesty and humanity. It made him feel real. Human. Despite that challenge, Bergkamp still became one of the Premier League's greatest players and one of Arsenal's most beloved icons. Across his professional career, Bergkamp scored more than 250 goals and produced countless assists that changed matches forever. But statistics can never fully explain his impact. Dennis Bergkamp changed how English football viewed technical players. He proved intelligence could dominate matches just as much as speed or power. At Highbury, fans did not just watch Bergkamp. They admired him. Because every touch felt unforgettable. Even today, many football fans still speak about Dennis Bergkamp with a kind of respect usually reserved for artists and visionaries. That is why Dennis Bergkamp will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the trophies. Not just because of the goals. But because he made football feel beautiful. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, was Dennis Bergkamp the most intelligent footballer of his generation? Before the global superstars. Before football became a billion-dollar game. There was Pelé. The king. The first true football icon. To millions around the world, Pelé was not simply a player. He was football itself. A symbol of joy. Of hope. Of brilliance. And for many fans, he remains the greatest footballer the world has ever seen. Born Edson Arantes do Nascimento on October 23, 1940, in Três Corações, Brazil, Pelé grew up in poverty. His family struggled financially. As a child, he often played football barefoot using makeshift balls created from socks or paper. But even then, something about him looked different. His touch. His imagination. His movement. Football seemed natural to him. His father, who had once dreamed of becoming a footballer himself, recognized the talent immediately. And by the age of 15, Pelé had already joined Santos FC. Within months, Brazil had discovered a phenomenon. Pelé played football with freedom and creativity unlike anything many had ever seen. He could dribble, score, create, head the ball, finish with either foot. And he did it all with joy. At just 17 years old, Pelé traveled with Brazil to the 1958 FIFA World Cup in Sweden. Nobody expected the teenager to change football history forever. But he did. Pelé scored 6 goals during the tournament, including 2 in the final against Sweden. The world watched in amazement. A teenage boy had become football's newest superstar. And Brazil became world champions for the first time. One famous image from the tournament showed Pelé crying in celebration after the final whistle. It was the beginning of football immortality. Over the next decade, Pelé transformed football into a truly global sport. With Santos, he helped turn club football into an international spectacle. Teams across the world paid simply for the chance to play against Pelé and Santos. Wherever they traveled, stadiums filled. Because people were not just watching football. They were watching Pelé. Nicknamed O Rei, the King, Pelé became football's first worldwide celebrity. Former teammate Carlos Alberto Torres once said, "Pelé was born to play football just like Beethoven was born to write music." And sometimes, watching Pelé, it genuinely looked true. His balance. His intelligence. His finishing. Everything looked effortless. In 1962, Pelé won his second FIFA World Cup with Brazil. Then in 1970 came what many still consider the greatest international football team ever assembled. Brazil 1970. Playing alongside legends like Gersinho, Tostão, and Rivellino, Pelé led Brazil to another World Cup triumph in Mexico. The football was beautiful, creative, fearless, joyful, and Pelé stood at the center of it all. His header in the final against Italy national football team remains one of football's most iconic World Cup moments. When Brazil lifted the trophy, Pelé became the only player in history to win 3 FIFA World Cups, a record that still stands today. Across his legendary career, Pelé scored more than 1,000 goals. Some debate the exact number, but what nobody debates is his impact. Because Pelé changed football forever. He helped transform the sport from a game into global culture. He inspired generations across continents. From the streets of Brazil to stadiums around the world, young players dreamed of becoming Pelé. Later in his career, Pelé joined New York Cosmos and helped grow football in the United States during the 1970s. Even near retirement, his influence remained enormous. Wherever Pelé went, football followed. Former player Franz Beckenbauer once famously said, "Pelé is the greatest player of all time." He reigned supreme for 20 years. And perhaps what made Pelé truly special was the joy he gave people. Football looked happy around him. Bright, creative, alive. That is why Pelé will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the goals. Not just because of the trophies. But because he helped give football to the world. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe or follow to the channel, so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Pelé still the greatest footballer of all time? He never chased fame. He never demanded attention. But when the World Cup arrived, Miroslav Klose became unstoppable. Quiet. Disciplined. Relentless. Klose built one of the greatest international careers football has ever seen without ever becoming football's loudest superstar. To teammates and fans, he was simply known as Miro. But across world football, another nickname slowly emerged: the silent goal machine. Because year after year, tournament after tournament, Miroslav Klose kept scoring. Born on June 9, 1978, in Opole, Poland, Klose moved to Germany as a child with his family. Football was already in his blood. His father had been a professional footballer. His mother played for the Polish national handball team. But unlike many football prodigies, Klose's rise was not immediate. He developed later than most elite players. In fact, he did not become a Bundesliga regular until his 20s. That made his journey even more remarkable. Klose began attracting attention with FC Kaiserslautern, where his movement, aerial ability, and finishing quickly stood out. He was not flashy. He did not rely on tricks or impossible dribbles. Instead, Klose mastered positioning, timing, intelligence, movement inside the box. He understood exactly where goals would appear before defenders did. And once he arrived at international level with Germany, history slowly began to unfold. At the 2002 FIFA World Cup, Klose exploded onto the world stage. He scored 5 goals during the tournament, all with his head. Suddenly, football fans everywhere knew his name. Germany reached the final, and Klose announced himself as one of world football's deadliest tournament strikers. After successful years at SV Werder Bremen, Klose joined FC Bayern Munich. At Bayern, he added major trophies to his growing legacy. 2 Bundesliga titles, 2 DFB Pokal trophies, 2 League Cups. But what truly separated Klose from many great strikers was not only goals. It was humility. In an era increasingly dominated by ego and controversy, Klose became respected across football for his honesty and professionalism. One famous moment perfectly captured his character. In 2012, while playing for SS Lazio, Klose deliberately admitted to the referee that he had scored a goal using his hand. The goal was disallowed. Many players would have stayed silent. Klose chose honesty. That moment earned admiration from football fans around the world. Former Germany manager Joachim Löw once described him as a complete professional and an example for every young player. And nowhere was that professionalism more important than on football's biggest stage. The FIFA World Cup. Tournament after tournament, Klose delivered. While generations of stars came and went, Klose continued scoring. Calmly, consistently, efficiently. By the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, history stood directly in front of him. The all-time World Cup goal-scoring record. For years, the record had belonged to Ronaldo Nazario with 15 World Cup goals. Then, against Brazil, in Brazil itself, Klose scored his 16th World Cup goal. The record was broken. It was one of football's most poetic moments. And just days later, Klose completed the perfect ending. Germany became world champions after defeating Argentina national football team in the final. At last, the quiet striker who had spent years delivering for his country lifted football's greatest trophy. Across his professional career, Klose scored more than 300 goals and became Germany's all-time leading goalscorer for many years. But statistics alone can never explain why he earned so much respect. Because Miroslav Klose represented something football rarely sees today. Humility, discipline, teamwork. He never tried to be bigger than the game itself. And perhaps that is exactly why football still remembers him so fondly. Not as the loudest player, not as the flashiest player, but as one of the most dependable and respected forwards football has ever seen. That is why Miroslav Klose will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Not just because of the records, not just because of the trophies, but because he proved greatness does not always need noise. If you enjoyed this episode of True Footballing Icons, make sure to leave a like, subscribe or follow so you never miss another legendary football story. And let us know in the comments, is Miroslav Klose the greatest World Cup striker football has ever seen?